This is the D6 generation with your hosts, Craig Gallant.
Wrong! If you're getting any compensation, it's not charity!
Russ Wakeland. You put me on a boat with frickin' dragons attacking me and whatnot? Now we're talking. And Colby Dauch in the third chair.
Whoop, 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 Gingham style.
With contributions from Total Fangirl.
Vampires do not sparkle.
And our loyal listeners.
Are you crazy? That's like 400 hours of gamer nonsense.
Welcome to another edition of Rapid Fire, the roundtable discussion of all things gaming, coming in at the speed of an enormous cobra carrying an army on its back, slithering through the desert sands of ancient Egypt. This edition is brought to you by Adon. Thanks to Mr. Craig Gallant, hey, for stopping by the Zombie Smith booth at Adepticon and humoring me by demoing Songs of Our Ancestors. I'm Geekly McNerdigan, your host. Today, as always, our panelists are Russ Wadget Wakeland and tartan chapeau-wearing gamer god Colby Dauch. Let's begin. Issue number 1. Cross-pollination, also called alligamy, occurs when pollen or ideas or concepts are delivered from one plant or flower or game designer or community to another plant or designer or community. The effect that this has on creative endeavors will often see traits of one product suddenly appearing in another product, often in a way that brings the two closer together. Question. Should the gaming industry suddenly suffer inexplicably from colony collapse disorder, what would be the inspiration for D&D 6th edition be? Mudwasp Wakeland.
Deck building.
Dwarf Carpenter Dosh.
Mud wrestling.
Well, considering CCD would mean that there was no more cross-pollination and D&D would be forced to regurgitate itself, that would mean that D&D 6th edition would be a cold, lifeless copy of D&D 1 through 5. Never mind. Issue number 2. The Egyptian culture is so old, reaching so far back before recorded history, that their earliest myths and legends are almost impossible to decipher. Because of this, there are innumerable creation myths, many of which are mutually exclusive. Likewise, the monstrous mythological creatures of ancient Egypt are difficult to tie down. Over the thousands of years of Egyptian culture, many creatures evolved from monsters to heroes to gods and then back again. Question. According to Egyptian mythology, what was the most common form taken by the being Apep, who makes a habit of attempting to eat the sun on a daily basis? Reseneb Russ.
Going with Jackal.
Kantre Sabakoptep Colby.
I was going to go with wolf, which is just a jackal.
It would make you both wrong. It's a snake, of course. Perhaps it would have helped if I had told you that Apep eventually became Apophis, which eventually became Set. No. Oh. Issue number 3. Bioshock is a first-person shooter video game developed by Irrational Games, at the time named 2K Boston, and released for Microsoft Windows and Xbox 360 platforms in August 2007. Bioshock received critical acclaim and was particularly praised by critics for its immersive environment, its unique settings, and its morality-based storyline. Question. The storyline of Bioshock is considered to stem directly from the personal philosophy of novelist, philosopher, playwright, and screenwriter Ayn Rand. What was the name of Ayn Rand's philosophy? Andrew Ryan Russ.
Would you kindly repeat the question?
What's the name of Ayn Rand's philosophy? Andrew Ryan Russ.
Go ahead. I'm going to defer to Colby.
Senator Cohen Colby.
The name of the philosophy or the name of the book?
I would accept either.
Oh, Atlas Shrugged is the book. Yeah, come on. That's easy.
Not actually the name of the book.
Darn it.
What?
Sadly, you have succeeded in randomly naming one Ayn Rand book. Unfortunately, it's not the right one, so that makes you both wrong. The philosophy is called objectivism, as set forth in her treatise, The Virtue of Selfishness. Deep research. Issue number 4. Egypt is a very ancient land, as I mentioned earlier, and as such has had many, many names. In fact, Egypt is now known by its own people as Misr, or something that's remotely pronounced like that. The name Egypt actually comes through the ancient Greeks, who altered most Egyptian names to those familiar by Westerners today. One of the names of ancient Egypt was Kemet, which translates to either Land of the Black People or the Black Land, depending on who you're listening to. Question. Of course, Kemet wasn't Kemet when it was Kemet. It had no vowels, first of all, and was in fact written in hieroglyphics. What were the hieroglyphs that spelled out Kemet? Neru Russ.
I'm going with falcon, squiggly line, eyeball.
Kenjer Colby.
A rat eating its own tail, followed by a pyramid and then an upside down pyramid, and then a wolf's head.
Well, you were partly correct in that you had 4 characters. Russ was completely wrong, and neither of you had any characters correct. I thought for sure I was actually ending on an easy one. That would be a piece of crocodile hide with spines in it, which gives us the K sound, an owl that marks the M sound, and half a loaf of bread marking the T sound, and a circle, the symbol of a crossroads, telling us it's a place. I would have also accepted spiky crocodile, hide, owl, whole loaf of bread, and white dot. That's it for now. Thanks for listening, and good night.
So close.
This episode of the D6 Generation is brought to you by GameSalute.com. Check out gaming news or find out what the new hotness is on Springboard. GameSalute.com.
And by Battle Foam, protecting your army so you don't have to.
And by Conquistador Games, focusing on immersive and thematic games. More details at CQGames.com.
And by Cool Mini or Not, the vanguard of a new genre, bringing minis and board games together. CoolMiniOrNot.com.
And by Geek Nation Tours. Rise up and join the Geek Nation, touring the world at GeekNationTours.com.
And Wargame Soldiers and Strategy Magazine, making historical wargaming less scary and more fun.
Hello!
Oh!
Hello.
And welcome to episode 125 of the D6 Generation. I'm Russ Wakelin.
I'm Craig Lunt.
And I'm Colby Dauch.
Hey, Colby, welcome to the show. Thanks so much for coming back on. We really appreciate it.
Thanks so much for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Oh, great to have you on here. And, of course, Colby, the man behind Plaid Hat Games, amongst other things.
Beneath the hat, you could say.
Yes, the man under the tartan plaid. Is plaid the same as tartan, or is that totally different?
No, those are different patterns.
Yeah, okay. So just wrong. Just saying.
Ooh,
I think, wait, are they different patterns?
I don't know. No,
Wait, what's the one?
No, look, if you're going to lead a company called Plaid Hat Games, that
Oh,
makes you an authority.
gosh.
You are now an authority, Colby.
I know there's another pattern that's like plaid that isn't plaid. but I'm not sure that's called tartan.
Okay, so
I'll do some research and get back to you.
all right. So why don't we write in to info at the D6 Generation or Colby
Send
at
it to
Plaid Hat
Russ
Games.
at the D6 Generation, actually.
Let us know if plaid and tartan are the same thing. So on today's show, we're going to talk about that Plaid Hat or possibly tartan company has just announced they've got the Bioshock license, and you guys are working on an awesome Bioshock board game, right? So
That is correct.
we're excited that we're going to spend a good hour or so grilling Colby on what is the hotness of the Bioshock board game and what it was like to get that awesome license. And then later, Craig and I are going to jump into the Egyptian game Kemet. Is that right? Is that how you pronounce that, Craig? Kemet?
I believe, or commit.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to talk about that later too. But up first, we got some stuff to talk about here. Normally, we talk about our contests here, but we just got off the giant Adepticon contest stuff. Craig, how did that go?
Well, we did give away between $1,000 and $2,000 worth of games, so it went okay.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah, it was pretty unbelievable. We definitely outdid ourselves with numbers this year to the point where we actually had to get in. We were raiding the hotel as the staff was clearing out some of the other ballrooms from the convention. We were raiding their racks of tables and chairs and filling in the hall with more tables and chairs. And at one point, there was seating for over 150, and almost all the seats were taken.
Wow.
So that goes. At one point, that hall was hugely rocking, and eventually, and Russ, I blame you. There's a lot I blame you for, actually, where Adepticon is concerned.
I wasn't even there. How can I be responsible?
I blame you. That's why I blame you.
Okay.
Last year, you were there to stop me from doing too many performance-oriented competitions for games.
Uh-oh.
This year, there was no one to tap down my enthusiasm, so I drove it into the ground until everybody was like, oh my God, please just throw the games at us or something. So I ended up having to do like this sort of poor man's raffle where I made the raffle tickets up myself. And this was at 1 o'clock in the morning, mind you, and there was still over 80 people in the room.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and we gave away over 20 games just then. So It was pretty crazy. And of course, these games were from some of our longtime supporters, such as Plaid Hat Games, Weird Minutes, Yay. Conquistador, Stronghold Games, of course, Game Salute, of course, and Smirk and Dagger, of course. And it was just awesome. It was a great way to end the weekend. Again, I had both listeners and people who didn't know who I was. It was very funny because one night I went to dinner with the Geek Nation Tours group.
Nice.
And I was sitting at one end of this very long table with Chad and he's gonna kill me, and he's gonna kill me.
Terrace?
And there's nothing I can do. No, Terrence was gone. Romeo was gone. I'm like brain cramping, and I know you, and I know you're listening, and I know right now you're getting this really angry feeling, and your Viking face is flushing, and you're going to kill me the next time I see you. And there's nothing I can do because I just brain cramped your name right here on the radio.
Live.
But anyway, he's awesome. He's very funny. He's one of the hosts of 40K Radio.
All
Is he going to be on the radio?
Yeah. Anyway, hey, going
I thought this was an internet thing.
Kyle. There you go.
Nice.
I remember because I kept going, Kyle. But anyway,
Way to eloquently stall there. Nicely done.
thanks.
We'll fix it in post.
Yeah, no, he won't.
That's my favorite non-acted upon statement in podcasts.
Right.
Fix that in post. And I haven't heard that in a while. And so it was awesome. I had a blast with them. And it was the people, the Geek Nation Tours people around me were very nice, but none of them knew who I was, which is fine. I mean, I'm not like an egomaniac. I'm not like, do you know who I am? Right. But one of them was a rabid 40K radio fan that was just like, Kyle, you must love it. Kyle, you're awesome. Kyle, this is great. And Kyle kept looking at me like, well, he's Craig from the D6 generation. I'm like, dude, enjoy your glory. It's okay. So anyway, people that weren't, and that guy later on came to the board game night, had a blast. So people were coming up saying it was such a great way to finish such a competitive weekend. And then you get together and you're just playing all these.
Gingham. Gingham is the name of the pattern that's like plaid but isn't plaid.
There it is.
You mean like Gangnam Style?
Yeah, Gingham style. Opa.
Gingham Style.
Hey, now you will never. Now you will never.
Hey, maybe
forget
that's
that.
my quote for the beginning.
There you go.
Opa, Gingham style.
Opa Gangnam Style. All right, that's it. Title. We'll put that in there.
Oh God! And they heard you come up with it, so that's
Right there, live on the air. There it is, folks.
Yeah, but anyway, so yes, Adepticon was awesome. The board game night was incredible. We'll talk a little bit more about it when I talk about the games that I played, but we'll talk a lot more about it in the next Lost Chapter.
Hey, and speaking of Lost Chapters,
Speaking of that,
we just did a Lost Chapter here with our good friend Colby. Colby, do you remember what we talked about in the Lost Chapter? It was very short, actually, sort of.
We talked about it was the panel, right?
Yes, we did the intro because Colby and I were on this panel at PAX East not too long ago. And one of our, actually the fine folks at PAX sent us the recording of the panel. And so we thought it would be fun to share with our listeners. And Colby and I and Craig took a few moments to kind of give a little intro on there, a little context to the whole event there. So if you're interested in that, check out Book 54 in the Lost Chapters. And Craig, how do they go about getting a Lost Chapter?
Oh, they would go to our website, Russ, which would be www.thed6generation.com, and just look for the little Lost Chapter Charlie Angel, who's got himself wrapped around a big stack of books, and he'll click you right there.
There you go. That's
You
right.
can look at all the different. You could look at all the different ones that we've done. Or what else could they do, Russ, that would put all of those Lost Chapters at their fingertips?
We want to subscribe. So while you're there, you can see a little subscribe link, and it'll give you all the information you need. You can download our free iOS or Android app, which makes it a great, easy way to listen to the show. And then right in the show, each episode, next to it is the Lost Chapter episode. And if you are a subscriber, you can also listen to it for free as well. And we've gotten some people saying, hey, Lost Chapters, they're like $2 each. I'm like 50 episodes behind. I'm not going to drop $100 on Lost Chapters. Don't do that. Don't know. What you want to do is become a subscriber, and it's like Netflix. You pay whatever it is a month. I think it's like $4 a month, or you can get a 6-month or year-long deals at a good savings. And if you do that while you're a subscriber, you can listen to as much Lost Chapters as you want. Subscribe for a month. Get all caught up on them. Keep subscribing if you want. Cancel if you want. We don't care. Just have some fun with it and listen to the rest of the content and help us out a little bit along the way, so it's all good. So that is all of that. Now, Craig, what's the time now for?
Now it would be roughly time for achievements in gaming.
It is time. Nice. I like the laugh there. Achievements in Gaming is brought to you by Alchemist Academy. Cast spells, summon familiars, and increase your grade. Support on Kickstarter and get your 3 exclusive D6G, The Dice Tower, and Secret Cabal Gaming Podcast summoning spells. It ends on May 19th. All right, so let's see. What have you been playing lately? Oh, before we go there, so you're going to hear this noise. Get some new listeners. That noise is not an accident. That is the achievement noise. Whenever someone does something of interesting gaming-related achievementness, we will push that little button.
You might hear noises that are mistakes, but that's not one of them.
That's not one of them, right? So what have you been playing lately, Colby?
I've played Smash Up for 2 weeks in a row at game night. I was introduced last week, and I really dig this game. Have you guys played it?
No, I haven't. So give us a little background. What's it like?
AAG makes it, and there are several factions in the game. And to play the game, you choose 2 factions. So you might be like alien zombies or ninja robots or something like that. So you have ninjas and you have robots, and you combine them together into one deck.
Nice.
And each turn, you get to play an action card if you have one, and then you can play a minion card if you have one, and then you draw 2 cards. And you play minions into bases. Bases have a certain strength or defense or whatever you want to call it. They have a life value.
Yeah.
And once the number of strength on all the minions in that base meets or exceeds that value, at the end of that turn, that base is destroyed, and players score points for that base depending on whatever it says on the base, whether you're first, second, third. It gives you numbers for each on how many points you're going to score. First person 15 points wins.
Cool.
It sounds simple, but there's special abilities on the base, there's special abilities on all the cards, and they all work together in a really fun way. It could definitely, like, I could see people suffering from analysis paralysis on this game, but only because it seems like there's so many potentially cool and good decisions that you could make.
That sounds cool. Now, is it a fast playing game? Looking at like an hour, or is it a longer game?
Yeah, I would say you could get it done in an hour if nobody's
really
suffering too bad from that analysis paralysis I mentioned.
Cool. What else you playing?
I got to play some Magic, which I do from time to time. I'm not in any way serious. In fact, most of the time when I play Magic, I'm just playing some pre-built deck that either somebody handed me or I had that came pre-built. But this time, somebody had brought in a big stack of cards, and I kind of just quickly, in 10 minutes or so, built a deck out of that stack and then played that. And it went pretty well, and it reminded me just how fun that part of the game is. How it's obviously the game is geared towards that being an important part. And
right.
It just made me think it would be cool to kind of do an event where you all have a common pool and maybe have equal access to this common pool in some way, and like time, and how fast can you build the deck, and then how good is it within that time.
That's cool.
Which is kind of like a draft, but a faster time element, because drafts are fun, but they take a little longer than I guess I would like to get up and get playing.
Well, that's cool. Are you going to get back into Magic, or is it something you just dabble with?
No, it's just there's a couple guys that come to the game night that are into it to some extent or another, and I like it. I think it's a cool game, but I just play it here and there. It's nothing I'm serious about.
All right.
What they all say.
that's the addict's excuse.
Yeah.
I can quit any time, right?
Any
time. What else you playing?
I played, when I come on the show and we have something like this, so much of what we play is stuff we've been working on.
Right.
So I'll give you a sneak peek into that. We're working on a zombie game, which is Grown, another zombie game, but we wouldn't be working on a zombie game unless we thought we had something new to lend to the genre, and it's really cool. It's less about the zombies and more about the psychology, the group psychology of this colony that's trying to survive this post-apocalyptic event. And it's about their personality clashes, and it's about trying to complete your secret objectives while trying to complete a main objective, and self-centeredness comes into play, and arguments, and it's
that sounds neat.
It's something that's getting the heck play out of it. This is one that we haven't had any trouble getting playtests on, because there are several people who come to game night that love this game and play the heck out of it. So I think it's going to do super well for us.
That's awesome. Can you give any hints? Like, is it a co-op game or? Can you
It's co-op-esque, but you all have secret agendas, and so you might not want the thing to pass, or you might not want it to pass right now because you haven't completed your secret objective. So that even if other people win, you'll lose.
Are you all like leaders of a zombie apocalypse colony trying to survive kind of thing?
Yeah. You're all group leaders, and you have a following, but you're all part of this colony. And depending on the size of your following is the amount of influence and effect you have on the colony, and you can spend influence to do a bunch of different stuff. It's really interesting. I don't want to give too much away about it because it's still a good 6 months or so out at least, but. It is really taken our game group by storm, which is always a good sign when you've got something you're preparing for the market.
Nice. Well, thanks for that little preview. That sounds exciting. Can't wait to see that one. What else you got going on?
Galaxy Trucker. We've been playing a lot of this. Have you guys played Galaxy Trucker?
Oh, that game's pure win. One of my favorite games.
I love speed elements in games.
Yes.
I hate people who slow games down, and I love timers in games. And Galaxy Trucker. That whole spatial relations and see what happens to your ship. Yeah, love it. Back in the coming up section, I'm going to talk about a computer game that I've been playing that does some stuff like that. But yeah, Galaxy Trucker, thumbs up.
Nice. Yeah, that's a good game.
It seems a little expensive, like the price.
Yeah.
But even if the components don't necessarily say it's worth it, the gameplay is golden.
Yeah,
Get that game.
There's a lot of tokens in there, and there's little plastic astronauts, and there's a lot of wood. I don't know. There's a lot of bits in there. But yeah, it's pricey.
Yeah.
It is pricey.
I think it's like $75.
Yeah, that might be.
Which it wouldn't have been my guess, but I ordered it anyway because I'm in love with it.
Yeah, it's worth it.
The Adventures. I think it's Temple of Chak, but I'm not sure. It's Temple of something.
Is that the new
second Adventure?
That's the new one. You try to escape the thing, like Indiana Jones.
Yeah, have you played it?
I played the first one. I've not played the new one.
The new one is actually, a lot of people were disappointed in the new one because it didn't expand the first one. But the new one, I think, is actually probably a better game. It's very straightforward in its mechanics. It's push your luck, but its straightforwardness really lends this to like, some new gamers have shown up. So people who don't often play games have shown up. Here's a game that has a cool theme and is simple. It seems like a lot of those beginner games is like, okay, guys, what you're trying to do in this game is you're planting beans, and then you lost their interest. This is a game that's got a cool theme and some straightforward mechanics that are interesting and fun.
Nice.
So that's a great one to pull out with new gamers. And then it's every once in a while on game night, and I'm going to sound super nerdy because people are going to think I'm cosplaying. No. We play a game that we call Samurai. And the way this game works is it's a variant on a game called Ninja, and it's this physical kind of party game where you're trying to karate chop the other people in the group, and you have to take turns going around a circle, and on your turn you can move, but you have to keep 1 foot planted, so you can basically pivot to get where you're trying to go, and you can take one swipe. You have to do one fluid motion. And if you hit somebody else on their, I think their hand, then they're out. And we've taken a variant called Samurai. We've got a bunch of foam swords. It's the same thing, but if you hit them anywhere, they're out. And
totally not cosplay.
No.
I meant.
This is just brutal fun.
Not cosplay. I meant LARPing. It's not LARPing.
All right.
So you can block their shot as a reaction. You get one reaction when they go to take a swing, right? And it's this really physical game that gets a bunch of us out there and gets us doing something active, and it's fun. It's silly and fun, and you'd be surprised at how well it works. It's not LARPing where you're just going and smacking somebody with a sword. There's rules that help it maintain some sense of order and some sense of skill.
Nice. That sounds fun. I gotta try that with the kids. I think that'd be great.
Yeah.
Everybody get a sword, kids. Line up in a circle.
Adults,
Here we go.
But it would work great with kids.
No, it's more fun with adults even. I think it's great.
We have the mind of children in my game group. So
that's what you need. Craig, how about you, man? What have you been playing?
What have I been playing? Well, I had a big weekend, or week, or 3 weeks, as the case may be. And it starts, of course, with, I'm not going to steal Russ's thunder. I'll let you talk about most of it. But Iron Kingdoms role-playing, we had our second session of that and had a good time with that. And then almost immediately after that, I went to Adepticon. And those of you who followed my tweets,
You tweeted.
Well, I tweeted a lot. I felt like you, actually, in a good way. I was like, oh, look at me. I'm a correspondent.
I'm Multicron kind of Twitter.
Exactly. I was taking pictures. And, of course, the phone wouldn't tweet in the hotel. So I had to, save everything up and then go outside and do a bunch of tweets all at
professional
once.
Twitter tweeter. Look at that.
Look at that. And so that was actually fun. And of course, what wasn't fun was getting little prods from, Russ, back home. Nobody's tweeting. No local guys aren't tweeting. No pictures from the local guys. I was like, whatever, dude. Anyway, so those of you who were getting those tweets know that the weather was crazy at the beginning of Adepticon. In fact, all of that central that Chicago area was shut down by flash floods. And all of the flights going in there were either postponed, canceled, delayed. We were delayed about an hour and a half, and so we played a bunch of Martian Dice at the airport.
Nice.
So that was fun. Martian Dice, really quick little game. And then we finally got there. It was crazy. It took us an hour and a half to drive the usual 20-minute drive because all of the highways were closed. That's right, the highways were closed. So we actually did get trapped in 2 flash floods. That was fun.
Wow.
It was like an Indiana Jones movie.
Nice.
More on that later. And so we finally got there. We played. I wandered around for most of the weekend. I was there for various other reasons. And so I didn't get a chance to really. I didn't do the epic thing, and I didn't get a chance to really play in anything other than the stuff that we were catching. So we played some Dungeon Command, the local boys. I brought a bunch of stuff with me and managed to play all of it. So Dungeon Command, we played some X-Wing, we played Perudo multiple times. That is not a game that goes over well in the middle of a quiet hallway of a hotel at 1 o'clock in the morning. Summoner Wars, and then Galaxy Trucker, which makes me in the minority because every time I play it, I just don't like it.
Oh, I love that game.
So it just doesn't work for me. I always plan to do one thing and then the other thing happens. And
that's what's beautiful.
Yes, exactly.
When your plans go horribly wrong.
Right.
I love it.
That's the fun part. Like when my ship takes one hit, the entire ship.
And the half of it falls
Right.
apart.
It literally splits in half, and you're like, oh no.
I mean...
I get hit by slavers, and they take my last 2 guys, so my ship just gets off into space. And everybody's like, that's awesome! That's the fun part! Okay. You say so. So I didn't enjoy that. I did some demos. I did the Robotech demo for Russ.
Now, what'd you think?
I thought it was good. It's weird, because it's got to go very quick. Or maybe that just might be... The movement rates are pretty fast, especially if you're playing those guys that are like jet fighters that can turn.
Yeah, well, they're jet fighters. I mean,
right. Well, that's my point. Is like they've got ridiculous movement on a little demo board. So, and I played a squadron of those, so 4 of those, 3 and a hero version, and those are cool because not only, again, if you followed my tweets, you'll see the plastics are crazy because on one sprue you get the fighter version, the robot version, and the pseudo fighter robot hybrid version. And at the beginning of every turn, what's that?
Guardian mode.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
I'll take your word for it. I don't know. I clearly something went wrong in my childhood because everyone I bumped into was like, dude, it's awesome. It's the best. It's the only important thing ever happening here. It's like, oh, if you say so. Seriously, the Robotech thing went right past me when I was growing up.
Did they have a good mob, though, watching it and everything?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They had a nice crowd, and they got really good buzz. The models looked beautiful. They were really well painted up. It was on a really nice demo table. The guys demoing it were excited. They were energetic. They knew what they were talking about. I mean, it's, you're rolling a bunch of dice. It's a bunch of dice rolling. And a couple of those dice rolls are like, you roll 8 dice, and if the bad guy has an anti-missile system, which they all do, and he needs a 5 or 6, but if he gets a 5 or 6, then all of those dice you just rolled are, like, canceled. So and that happened once, and so I was like, oh, that was a little frustrating after going through all that die rolling. But so I mean, I don't think it wasn't like, oh my god, it wasn't like when we first played Dust and we were like, oh my god, this is going to be a big deal. But at the same time, it wasn't like, oh my god, this is going to stink. It was like, this is pretty neat. And I think any of you out there who are like, oh my god, Robotech, oh my god, oh my god,
yes,
you're going to be very happy. The models look awesome, and I think the gameplay is going to be exactly because you can dodge and you can block, and I mean, the guy was explaining. I told him, I'm like, I don't know where this is coming from, so explain it to me, like why somebody who was like nostalgic for this, and he's like, oh yeah, okay, well here are your options. Here you can dodge, you get order points, so you can get your guys to do super special stuff. So it was neat, and I think it's going to be huge for all of you guys who are like all nostalgic about it.
Yay.
And then I played a demo of a little game called Songs of Our Ancestors.
Ooh, karaoke.
What's that?
Karaoke.
Not karaoke.
Oh.
It's a neat little game. It's like a World War I aesthetic, but the people are like these weird little alien weebles looking guys with big long noses, and I tweeted some of them too. And it was neat, and it was it wasn't like it was alternating activation kind of, but it was like you rolled to see how many activations you got each turn, and you could roll between 1 and 3, and if you got doubles, that was it for you that turn, and then the other guy went and he would get to go and push his luck until everybody on his side had gone, or he gets doubles, and so it's really, you can't tell like how often you're going to get to go before the other guy goes, so it really had a cool sort of fluid dynamic going because of that initiative element.
Nice.
And the tech level was like, like I was playing Partisans, so my guys would like shoot and then they would have to reload. But you had a lot of different action options. It was really neat, and the aesthetic was cool with those little weird alien guys, and they have tanks that look very cool and very World War I-ish, but at the same time very kind of sci-fi World War I. So it was neat. So that was cool. And then I demoed this game, Wild West Exodus.
Nice. So how was the reception for Wild West Exodus? This is
Wild West Exodus was busy all weekend long.
Nice.
And they had 2 amazing 2-foot by 2-foot demo tables that looked like movie sets.
Wow.
One was a Native American encampment with teepees and all kinds of cool stuff. And neither of them were flat. They were both like rolling hill kind of stuff that you couldn't look at it and see, oh, there's the foam.
Right.
I mean, it literally looked like high level model railroading stuff.
Nice.
And then the other one was a mine complex in the mountains, so pine trees everywhere, and it was cool. Now, again, the game is in development, so they don't have a lot of models. In fact, they were really upset because they brought an entire model case because they were hoping they were going to get a lot of the resin proofs in time, and none of those showed up.
Oh.
So all of the painted models from the Kickstarter front page were the only models they had.
Oh.
So they had a whole model case with 4 shelves, and the only thing in it was like the top shelf had a rotating mirrored pedestal on it with those models. Now those models live are ridiculously amazing.
Nice.
The paint jobs are amazing. The detail is awesome. Romeo and his crew cranked out 500 of the Ladies of the West Outlaw models.
Yeah.
And we're giving those away to the first 500 people that came up and asked for one, and I got one.
Oh,
and
cool.
The detail is awesome. It's really, really a cool miniature. The size is not problematic to me. Now, having seen them, I'm going to be able to use all my terrain, no problem.
Good. That's exciting.
So that was exciting too. But what was really cool was, again, if you watched some of the demos of videos, you saw that instead of using models, they were using acrylic silhouettes. And they made a bunch of those, and those were what you were doing the demo with. And they were literally the silhouettes of the actual models from the files used to make the proofs. So it was really cool. They were different colors. So I think the Native Americans were all blue, and the Outlaws were all brown, and there was one other, I can't remember what other faction. You could play any of them. So yeah, that went really cool. That was fun to watch, or actually play in and watch. And then there was board game night. And in board game night, I'm going to just really go quickly down. I played Evil Baby Orphanage with a bunch of our friends, which is always fun. I played Perudo with a bunch of listeners who were excited to learn, and that was awesome. I played Hex XL with a bunch of listeners, and that was awesome. I played Cutthroat Caverns with our friends, which was awesome right up until the very last monster was that stupid monster that keeps summoning more monsters, and that's when that game starts to get like, I just want to get out of the dungeon. And I played Survive Escape from Atlantis with our friend Yakface.
Yeah. From
All I
Daka
can say is beware Sean Connery bearing invites. He and his friend, and they were like, "Oh, Craig, you come over and play with us." And I was like, "Oh, awesome! That's awesome! I was hoping I'd get a chance to game with you." A crush, a bush, eat sand. I was like, "Oh my God, what did I ever do to you guys?"
He is a professional.
He is a professional. And then I came home, and Karen was like, "I want to play a game," so we played Carcassonne the Castle
Ooh, nice.
a couple times, so that was fun. And this past Tuesday, I really wanted to play minis. I was surrounded by miniature games at Adepticon and didn't play any. So I really wanted to play miniature games. And I walked in, and Adam was like, "Hey, you want to play Spartacus?" I always want to play Spartacus. We had an awesome Spartacus game. We started at 5 influence. So it was a longer game. It took about 90 minutes. But it was a blast. And the turn it ended, 3 of us could have won. So it was a really dramatic ending. Dave from the Nerd Herders podcast he got to 12, but he was the host previously, so he went first, and that gave Adam and myself the chance to batter him down and get him below 12. But then we spent all of our cards. I was hoarding my money because I knew that if I could get to the arena phase, there's no way anybody could stop me at that point because there's no cards that can mess with you. And I had all the money that I needed to get the last 2 influence, and I had a champion. I had Anameus with a trident, which is pretty amazing, and a shield, which is pretty cool, and a net, which is just a ridiculous combo. So, if I was host, then pretty much I was going to win. And then, so in my head, it was a done deal, and I was just like laying back, like, okay, here we go, just got to glide to the finish line. And then started throwing down cards in the intrigue phase. +1 influence to me, +1 influence to me, +2 influence to me, and it was just like bam, 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 and he won.
Nice.
So yeah, I've done that once. I went from like 4 influence to 10 and win in one go right there at the end.
And even when that happens to you, like that's done to you, that game is so much fun. It's just like nonstop battering each other and browbeating each other and just having a good time. And so we had a blast, and then we ended with Perudo. And those were all the games that I played over the last 3 weeks.
Nice. Well, I also played a few games here. First, we played, as Craig mentioned, our second session of the Iron Kingdoms RPG, and I'm still finding my way as Game Master. I think it went pretty well, but the first time I think my encounters were a little too easy, so this time I tried to ramp them up, and in the final battle of that night's session, it looked close for a minute there, but they finally killed the giant Ogren, and we did have one hero fall, but he got back up again, so it's all right. Yeah. Let's see. My love, I started, Colby, after our panel, I wanted to try Sentinels of the Multiverse because Chris was on our panel, the designer. So I'm like, we got to try this game. I've heard so much good things about it. So I got it, and right before we went to, my family just went to Disney World, and the way there, I was learning the game myself. And so we're down there, and I'm hoping my kids are going to like it. So one morning, my daughter's always up super early. So she's up early, and the rest of the family's getting ready to go. So I'm like, hey, you want to learn Sentinels? And she's like 10 years old. She's like, sure. So we start playing it, and she's just really getting into it and figuring it out. And all of a sudden, my wife's like, okay, time to go to the parks. And she's like, oh, but this game's so much fun. So if you know you got a board game that gets a 10-year-old more excited about the game than Disney World, you're doing something right. This is a great co-op game. I really, really loving it. Brought it to Game Night with all the guys last Tuesday, and we just played. We're going to play it once and then go to something else. Played it 4 times straight. We could not get enough of this game. It is so much fun.
Is there something going on with Sentinels of the Multiverse right now? I've noticed that it's like in the hotness on BGG. I think it's in like top sold on Cool Stuff Inc.
Yeah,
not top spot, but in the top spots.
I don't know.
It's seen some kind of revival or something.
Well, maybe it was from mentioning it at PAX. I don't know. I've been tweeting about it, but I don't do that much. I mean, I'm not that.
It's Russ. It's all Russ.
No, it's just
Russ.
It's just. Well, you know what it is, Colby? No, that's not really that. What it is? What it really is they just re-released the box set. It was out of print for a little while, and in the new printing of the box, it fixes a couple of issues in the game. One of them was in the original game. Everybody's got lots of hit points. The heroes have lots of hit points. The villain has lots of hit points. And objects have lots of hit points. And in the original game, there was no way to track hit points short of pen and paper or some dice you found. So it's very clunky. In the new box, it comes with a bunch of tokens. And the box is now big enough to hold all the cards. and it has dividers for all the cards, including all the expansions as well. So now suddenly you've got players can get back into it. There's also a new expansion just came out like about a month and a half ago too. So it's gotten reinvigorated, I think, from all that action. Good stuff, a lot of fun. I'm really digging it. Also played Seven Wonders with the New Wonders. I happened to play with Stonehenge, so I guess a new expansion just came out and had a bunch of new places, and we played with all new wonders. Still fun. That's a fun little game. I really like it a lot. Let's see. Colby, you played Seven Wonders before?
I have, yeah.
You like it?
Yeah, I think it's pretty cool. I like to play it really fast, and so if everybody else there is willing to like pick their cards and move fast, I like it. If people are hemming and hawing, it's less fun.
I'm with you. It's the right group of players. We had players who were all like boom, 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 experienced and really knew what they were doing. I was the only sort of new, but I'm not really a big thinker in these. I just like play and see what happens. So it was fun. It was fun. But you're right. If it slows down, it's kind of dull. Also played another Dungeon Command game with a friend Ryan. That's still a lot of fun. I'm liking that game. It's a great filler game. Played some Kemet, which we'll talk more about later in this episode. And Descent 2. We're so close to the final battle of our big campaign here. We're like one adventure away from the big final scenario, and still can't make it happen, though. My guys can't get together, so we're trying to make that happen, and we're all just having bad timing, but that's getting close. Oh, and Craig, I played the new Cutthroat Caverns with the brand new box set with the...
How'd that go?
Great. Actually, well, what's cool about it now is, so the heroes, there's now a deck of ability cards, okay? And each of the heroes has some number of abilities on their card now, and you go to the deck and pull those out and give them to your hero, but when they get those abilities, their starting hit points are lower. So in the base game, all heroes have 100 points and no abilities. But now in this new version, all the heroes have some abilities, but somewhat less hit points. And you can also build your own hero abilities if you want, because each of the ability cards tells you how many hit points you lose to have the ability. So basically, to balance the game out, you can have more cool abilities, but you start with less hit points, which is a big factor in Cutthroat. We had a great time with that. We should play that game more often. That is just such a fun game. And then, I should mention this, on the plane ride. So we're on the plane ride to Disney World, right? Big boring thing. I got 4 kids, my niece, my nephew, my 2 daughters, all there trying to do something. So I got my iPad, which is a great way to carry, because it's hard to play board games on a plane. Bits are going to shoot everywhere. So got the iPad out, played Forbidden Island twice. That was a huge hit. Forbidden Island, great on the plane, great for kids of all ages. Also got Alien Frontiers out, which all the kids really enjoyed also. It took a little while to explain it to them. Once they got the hang of it, though, they really rocked it. And then Colby Summoner Wars in the iPad was a huge hit. Huge hit to the point where I had to, like, give me that back because they're further going to drop it, passing it around so much. But they like that, too. And then, so I've talked about this in the show way back in the fall. Disney introduced this new card game at Walt Disney World in the Magic Kingdom called the Sorcerer of the Magic Kingdom. And what you do is you go into the parks, you get these cards. And these cards are all different characters, and they have abilities like the Dust from Pongo from 101 Dalmatians, or Pooh Bear's Heffalumps, or Lightning McQueen's Ka-Chow, or whatever, right? And then there's events. You get this map, and you go to places in the park, and it'll say, like, you're in Adventureland, you've got to fight Jafar in Adventureland. So it'll take you from these little windows to windows, look like windows of stores, and they'll open up as a portal, and it's an animated thing, and you hold your card up, and up to 4 people can hold their cards up, and then it'll use those powers on those cards. The cameras read the cards and make animated attacks from those cards, like the sorcerer's brooms fly at him, and the dust and everything, and attacks the villain. And you play these little adventures. Well, when you're done, every day you go to Disney World for free, you get another booster pack of these cards, and it's totally random, so we collects them. But when you leave the parks, you got all these cards, but nothing to do with them. Well, they just fixed that. And I think someone's been playing some Cutthroat Caverns or something, because now you can buy these little expansion packs of cards in the parks that come with one random villain and all the rules for the board game version. And the villain is in a giant oval picture with all his hit points in a circle, points around it. It comes with tokens to track it. It looks very, very much like the villains in Cutthroat Caverns, actually. And yes, it's a co-op game, so you're all playing against those villains. And the kids, we hadn't learned the rules or anything. We had all this stuff. We're flying home now on the plane, and the kids wanted to try it out, and they had it all carefully laid out on their tray tables, and they made it work, and they learned it, and they loved it. They played it like nonstop for the 4-hour flight home. So that's a nice little game. If you get that stuff, try it out. And finally, my daughter's birthday party. Just had her big birthday party, and she wanted me to run games for this. So I thought I'd share with you what I ran for a 9-year-old's birthday party of mostly girls and a couple boys. Up first was, my plan was I would run several little games, but kids like prizes. So I got a bag. I went to the dollar store and got this giant bag of plastic gold coins, which, by the way, looking at them now, they probably work pretty well as like a substitute for coins in any board game. So I got this giant bag of gold coins, and then I started playing games. The first game we played was Telestrations. So that's the one where it's kind of like telephone, the game you played in kindergarten, where you tell someone a secret to your left and it goes all the way around the circle, and by the time it's done, it's completely different than what you started with. Well, Telestrations is like that plus Pictionary, where you draw little pictures and pass the book around. So we did that. That was a huge hit. The kids loved that. And we gave coins for the silliest one. And then we
I like playing that game with and just forgetting about the cards and the points.
Yeah.
And instead of us going off of cards, we'll just come up with a phrase or something that's 5 words or less. And then we can make it kind of inside jokey. Yeah. And you end up with pictures of friends and stuff in there, and that's a blast just for, pure fun.
Actually, we did the same thing. I threw the cards out. I have them, but I didn't use the cards or any of that stuff. And we just I told the kids exactly the same thing, Colby. Like pick a phrase, and of course they're all picking like, My Little Pony, all these crazy things, and it got kind of
right. Because the cards, I found that sometimes it just goes through all 5 illustrations and stays the same, and that game is only fun when it gets ridiculous.
Right, it's got to get completely crazy from what you started with, right? So that was fun. Then we played the card game Once Upon a Time. Now this is the card game where you have a hand of cards and you start to tell a story, and you're trying to in your hand of cards might be a castle or a giant, and you're trying to tell a story. It says once upon a time there was a castle, and you play the castle card down, and in that castle lived the giant. You play the giant card, and you're trying to keep telling a story without stopping. It uses all your cards, but if you say something that someone else has in their hand, they can play that card. You might say, and the giant walked down the road, and someone else can say, oh, I got the road, and they put the road down, and then they continue telling the story. And to try to steal, and if you ever pause or get confused, you got to stop, and you got to take a new card, and then someone else to your left starts telling the story. Kids love that one, too. Kids love to make up stories and tell stuff, and that was another huge hit. And then finally, I think I've done this before, I mentioned this before on the show, Werewolf is the ultimate 10-year-old party game. Kids love Werewolf. You just got to tone it down to the scariness level of like, a spooky campfire story you tell like Girl Scout camp. You do it at that level, the kids love it. They love trying to figure who the werewolf is. They love trying to listen for the sounds as people move. It was just a huge, huge hit as well. Great one, and the kids all seem to have a good time. So Telestrations, Once Upon a Time, and Werewolf, all fun party games for kids, at least in my experience. So, that's all the games we've been playing. Oh, and Craig, where did you play those board games when you got back from Adepticon?
Oh, well, I was playing those board games at Myriad Games in Manchester. Now, don't forget, though, that there's a Myriad Games in Salem and a Myriad Games on Long Island, and, of course, a massive Myriad Games presence on the internet.
Nice. Now next we talk about modeling, but I haven't done much modeling at all because, unfortunately, I was traveling a lot and stuff. Colby, do you do any modeling at all, or are you a board gamer mostly?
I do not. I do not do any modeling. Unless you count Hot Spring Fashions.
Oh, nice. I'll give you an achievement for that.
Swish.
Nice.
Where's the I want an achievement clip.
Here you go. There you go.
Thanks.
Nice.
He's putting it out there. You got to salute.
I'll give you an achievement for those calves because those are hot. I'm not going to lie. All right.
That's too much.
Craig, what have you been playing?
Nothing. But I did see some awesome stuff at Adepticon. War Gamma, who is awesome. They were with us for a little while, and then they're building their business up again. So you'll maybe hear from them soon. They are awesome, and they had some cool stuff. They had infinity barricades that were cool, and I don't know why I keep buying stuff for this game that I don't think I'll ever play, but I did. And they look awesome, and that you can't beat the price. They had dragon's teeth. They had cool dragon's teeth, and I've always wanted some, so I bought some, and they were awesome. They have absolutely awesome. This was brand new. He had just got the masters literally as he was stepping onto the plane. I think they were hand delivered to him on the jetway so he could show them at Adepticon. They're race themed defensive barricades for any Gothic space game you care to name.
Wow.
They just happened to be the same length as a certain Aegis defense line. But it was awesome watching him bend over backwards trying, not trying because he never did. I would be like, oh, come on, those are Tau, aren't they? Those are totally Tau.
No, there's anime
you could
sci-fi.
use them in whatever way you'd like. You're good. You're good. And he has a new Chaos Giant that he showed me. Actually, I have one, and I may keep it, or we may give it away as a prize.
Nice.
I'm not sure yet. But awesome stuff. And then there was a group there called Modeling Leaves the Dark Ages who had these awesome kits that they were kickstarting where you would use LEDs and you would totally light them up. Again, lots of pictures on the Twitter. They actually, working with Wargamma, they had done clear resin pieces for a Terminator, the arms, the lightning claw arms, and then painted everything but the lightning claws, and then scooped out the arms and put the LEDs inside the arms so the lightning claws were glowing.
Wow.
It was awesome. And the little switches could change from like flickering to flashing to steady. It was lots of really cool stuff. For some reason, they pulled their Kickstarter. I don't think it's gonna be long before we see these guys again. They had a lot of really cool stuff and a lot of really cool ideas, and they spent a lot of money at Adepticon, I think, because their banners were everywhere in the big hallways.
Oh, maybe they overspent.
Big halls. So that might be one of their problems too. So I didn't do anything, but there was a lot of cool stuff going on at Adepticon.
All right. So what about other random geeky stuff like books and TV shows or movies? What have you been in that area, Colby?
I just finished the Compendium Volume 2 of The Walking Dead.
Oh, what'd you think?
Great. I love the first ones. It's been a long time since I read them, but so I picked them up kind of. 2 was about around where I left off, and man, those are page turners. Nice. I was up till like 4 a.m. one night reading that. I couldn't put it down.
Nice achievement for that.
I've been reading. I love Stephen King.
Me too.
I'm a huge fan of Stephen King.
Me too.
And yet, he has such a huge backlog that I can just continue to find new stuff by him. I've been reading different seasons.
Yes.
Just, picked up a paperback, and it's got Apt Pupil in there, which is old Nazi general lives on the street, and a young kid finds out, and he's got this kind of dark interest, and ends up over there getting told stories and how they affect each other in that relationship. It's really cool. Shawshank Redemption's in there, which I never read. The Stand By Me, I forget what it's the actual call, but it's Stand By Me. It's all in there. All really cool. Love King. I've been reading Invincible, which is another Kirkman comic superhero. Really cool. Yep. Have you guys heard of it?
I've not heard of Invincible, no.
Yeah, Invincible it's another Kirkman comic. Walking Dead is Kirkman. This is Kirkman. It's a great take on supers, even if you're kind of played out on supers.
Yeah.
Just really cool, beautiful. Like the art in it is so awesome, and the coloring is so awesome. Great book. And then I've been listening to some Audible.
Nice, excellent choice.
Choice.
I've been listening to Isaac Asimov's Foundation series.
How do you like that as an audiobook?
I've never read it, but I've liked it all right as an audiobook. We just had the second Summoners come in, and this is the first big pre-order I've had to fill myself. I used to use a fulfillment company, but wanted to do it myself so I could be more accurate in that.
Yeah.
And so I got through that whole first Foundation book in one night. I was up late just packing orders. And it's cool, the ending was surprising because I hadn't realized that it was a series at first.
Right.
I thought, oh great, so this book's gonna span 1,000 years, and it gets like 200 years in on this 1,000-year thing that they set up, and basically just says the end, like right in the middle of the story.
Right.
I was like, just because you say the end there doesn't mean that constitutes a good ending to this book.
Yeah, to be continued is what should be written there.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's been fun. It's really cool to go back and kind of listen to the greats, especially if you haven't already. In my case, I hadn't. And like there's cool stuff when you're listening to, like, so much. They were so prophetic in so many things, and then so many other things are like
way off.
Right. Thousands and thousands of years in the future, they're still printing newspapers.
Right.
Right. And they all smoke cigarettes. So it's just kind of
get all the bad stuff out of those cigarettes. That may come back.
All right. Yeah. Some e-cigs.
Right.
I've been listening to Aces High, which is superhero stuff. It's this really cool, cohesive superhero universe where the population is hit with this basically this alien virus that it kills most people that it comes in contact with, and then it turns some into these hideous monsters, and then it turns others into these superheroes. And the hideous monsters sometimes have superpowers, but the heroes are the ones that get the best superpowers, and they look normal as well. And so the monsters are called Jokers, and the heroes are called Aces, and the book's called Aces High, and George R. Martin writes in it, and he edited Aces High, and it's really good.
Yeah,
Nice.
I like it a lot.
Nice.
And then I mentioned the game that's like Galaxy Trucker. I've been playing FTL. Have you guys heard of this?
I love FTL. I do love it.
FTL is such a great, like, if you're a board gamer and you don't play many video games, give this one a try.
Yeah.
It's really board gamey, but in an interesting kind of way. You can get it on Steam.
Yep.
It's a great game, and you can come back to it over and over again. It does not age, like, because it was aged when it came out.
Right.
It's a very old school graphics in that, very much focused on the gameplay.
Yeah, it's got that 8-bit style graphics, but they do a good job with it. It's fun.
Right. And I played through Tomb Raider. Have you guys played the new Tomb Raider? Craig, you don't really play video games, do you?
Oh, but I'm familiar with Tomb Raider.
Yeah, I love the new Tomb Raider, Colby. I played it through over in one weekend. I got it and played the whole darn thing.
So good, so cinematic.
Good. Yeah,
like you have to get past the first part.
Yep.
It sets it up like it's going to be a quick time events type game, but it's totally not. It's a great game. It's great character development and just one step closer to games being taken kind of as a serious art and storytelling device.
I think it does bring a new level to cinematic storytelling. I think it really does, because you're in there, you just feel what she feels. And I mentioned before, the camera work is so solid in there. Like it does a good job when she's down in it, crawling around. It gets in tight, so you feel really claustrophobic. And then when she's out climbing really high on a mountain, it pans way out. You almost get vertigo. It just so much little things like that make the game feel really, really good.
And then speaking of advancements in storytelling in video games, Bioshock Infinite, of course, played through that.
Yeah.
As did you, Russ.
I just finished it. I finished it before I went on vacation. Yeah, I loved every bit of that game, including the ending. I know some people didn't like the ending so much. I really enjoyed the whole thing. What did you think of the, not without spoilers, what did you think of the end?
I thought it was fantastic.
They're
genius.
Now,
as
a fellow Stephen King fan, have you read Dark Tower?
Yeah.
Did you feel a little Dark Towery there?
The ending, I guess there's some of that.
There's some ending parallels there without any spoilers. I think there's a little bit going on there.
In a sense, I suppose.
Well, also the universe.
Did you like the Dark Tower ending?
I did. Yeah, I was okay with it. I don't know how else they could have ended it. Really, I mean, I don't know. I thought it was cool. I know not everybody did.
I was fine with it.
But it was also like throughout the Dark Tower and throughout Bioshock. It's not really a spoiler, but there's other universes bleeding in and out, and that sort of happens in Dark Tower also. So I got
that's true. Yeah.
Yeah. It just felt, it wasn't not in any way like a stolen idea, just more of a really cool kind of a parallel sort of idea of it. It was cool.
Yeah, I would have loved for Liz to meet Ken Levine in the game.
That would have been awesome. That would have been awesome. Yeah, that would have been great.
But it was. Have you not read the Dark Tower, Craig?
I started.
Yeah, so
okay.
For those who don't know,
this is not my episode.
Are we gonna spoil it?
Why don't you guys go ahead and get married?
Well, there is a part in the Dark Tower where Roland Deschain, the main character, meets Stephen King, the author of the book. So that's sort of what the hint is.
I read the first one and wasn't intrigued, and that was when it first came out. And now that it's all finished, I would really like to do it on Audible, but it's really expensive to do it on Audible because there's so many books and they cost full price and they're not very long. So I would like to someday do that.
What else reminded me of Dark Tower, Colby, was the disjointed music. Like you'd be in Bioshock and you'd hear like AC/DC being sung 50 style. And remember in the very first Dark Tower book, you hear Hey Jude in the middle of a cowboy bar.
Yeah.
It's like, that reminded me of it too a little bit. But it was cool. I like Bioshock all the way through. I thought it was another great example of great cinema, great storytelling, and fantastic art direction.
I wonder if they consider that an inspiration, because I had not recognized all those parallels until you just named them.
Yeah, but I do that stuff all the time. Like I'll tell people that books are like Harry Potter. They're like, whatever, dude, you're making crap up. So I don't know.
Well, you are.
I feel like that fifth grade English teacher that explains to you that there's all the symbolism in the book, and the author just goes, no, sometimes I just wrote that, and it looks like he's Jesus Christ, but he's really not. He's just standing there with his arms out.
I love that scene. I mean, since we were talking about that scene where Deschain meets King.
Yeah.
Like, and just the kind of commentary that he makes on how writers kind of write themselves into their lead roles, and
Right.
it's a great scene.
That is an awesome scene. Cool. So let's see, Craig, what else have you been doing in the other category there?
Well, what have I been doing? Well, I am listening to Post Captain, Book 2 of the Aubrey Maturin series by Patrick O'Brien on Audible.
Yeah. How do you what's a great way to jump into Audible there, Craig?
You know what? We would appreciate it if you jump into Audible using our website. That's how we would appreciate it.
It's a way to help us and try out a new service, and all for free.
We would not be doing this if this was not an awesome deal and cool. And if you're diligent and you don't want it to cost you anything, it doesn't cost you anything.
That's right.
You go ahead and go to our website, click on through. You're going to get 1 free credit, which pretty much amounts to almost any Audible book that exists for free, and membership for 30 days with audible.com, which accesses all kinds of different sales and promotions and stuff like that, which is awesome. And so it's a really great service. I would say, I did it, and I had every intention of canceling after the month was over, and I didn't. And now I've had it for way over a year, and my library is huge, and I just keep doing it to the point where, in fact, I had bought several short books by accident. I try to keep my books longer so that my credits last, but I got a couple short ones in a row, and my credits were going down. And then the Aubrey Maturin books were all on sale. So you pay about $13 a month, and that's worth 1 credit. So if you see stuff on sale that's less or considerably less than $13, you could scoop it up and think of it in your head, justify it as I do, like you're saving money because
Gotta game the system.
Right.
exactly, I'm doing it, man, and I'm keeping my credit.
Keep the man down.
I'm going to tell you that's
Give
how
them
I'm
your
going
money.
to get you. And so yeah. So I did that. I got the next couple of books from the Audrey Maturin series. I'm all excited about that. So it's a great promotion. Go ahead, go on our website, go on through. Please do it. It's awesome. Now at Adepticon, Steve, I hope your name is Steve because otherwise I'm going to feel really bad, is a very, 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 very nice, very supportive, fun, friendly listener from Australia who does the Geek Nation Tours trip to Adepticon every year.
Nice.
So it was awesome seeing him again. And I can't remember what game we played, but didn't we play a game, Steve? Let's pretend we did, because we shoulda, because you came all that way. But as I was leaving, he was in the lobby, and he recommended to me, because I had just finished my Kindle book, he recommended to me a series by Peter F. Hamilton, and the first book is called Reality Dysfunction. And on his recommendation, I picked it up at the airport using my Kindle. And wow, I haven't done like deep philosophical sci-fi in a long time, so it was really grinding on my brain on the airplane, where it's like it's not really far future, but it's far future enough that mankind is genetically drifted. So there's different types of mankind, and some of them do like really like in-depth biological manipulation of themselves and everything around them, and others think that's really bad. And so there's lots of different factions, and there's lots of different characters, and there's lots of different settings, and I'm like, oh my god, this is so deep, I don't know if I can do it. But I'm finally getting in. I'm hitting my groove. I'm like at 25% in, and things are starting to settle down in my head. Really enjoying it. For a couple different reasons that I'm not allowed to talk about until the very end of May. I am trying my best to clear the decks of everything that I have going right now, writing-wise. So I am writing the entire year remaining comic books right now, all at the same time, which is intriguing. And I'm my FFG super secret assignment. I'm buckling down and trying to get that out of the way before my deadline. So I've got that finished, and I'm well on my way there to having that done. But that's been taking up a lot of my time. The coolest thing I did at Adepticon, and no offense to anybody that I met that wasn't involved with this, was people coming up to me asking me to sign their comic books.
Ooh, that's cool, man.
It was great. These are people that have never heard of me before. They don't know about the D6 generation, and it was about as many people who knew me and knew me through the podcast who were like, "Oh my God, you wrote this!" And so I was literally signing comic books, which was absolutely surreal. Please, if you ever see me doing that, don't think for a minute that I think I deserve people asking me for that, or that I'm going, that's right, you can have my signature, my autograph. There you go. Because it's just
so
crazy.
much with that when people first started asking me for like signatures on games and stuff at conventions. Like I felt so sheepish about it. Like,
Exactly.
this is I'm writing on your game. I am so unimportant. Why are you doing this?
When I was doing my demo, two people walked up and were like, "Hey, that guy just said you were the writer. Can you sign my comics?" And I was like, "I can, but I don't have to." Which generally, I guess, is not the thing you're supposed to say to them. Like, what do you mean? Like, are you not really the writer? Like, no, I'm just saying I don't like, because they were using it as a sales thing. The Outlaw Miniature guys were like, the writer's here, he can sign it, and then I would be behind them going, but I don't have to. And so it was very surreal. Because I wasn't doing a lot of gaming, I did have some downtime, and we got there a day early, which is another thing I'm blaming Russ on.
How's that my fault?
Because you didn't go, so my schedule got all messed up. So I got there a day early. So we went and saw G.I. Joe Retaliation, which was fine. It's a G.I. Joe movie, and if you don't know what you're going in for when you go into a G.I. Joe movie and put your money down, then you don't deserve to like get your money's worth. Because I mean, it's not like you're expecting Laurence Olivier.
Yeah, it was a fun ride, and the fight on the side of the mountain was worth the price of admission.
Absolutely. It was fun. Yeah. It was interesting. It was fun to me because there was a giant sign as you walked in that said, due to flooding in the region, we have been experiencing regular power outages. Please be patient. So I was like, oh my God, it's the apocalypse. I can't even watch G.I. Joe.
And that's the answer to the question, what would you do in the apocalypse? Craig would go watch a movie.
I would indeed. Not G.I. Joe.
All right, well, apparently you would. You did.
Yeah, well, I did. I didn't know it was the apocalypse until I saw the sign at the movie. So that's not really, that's egg, chicken. Anyway.
Right.
And then I saw Oblivion, which I thought was awesome, to the point where I thought it was a slam dunk. Any sci-fi person would be walking out of that movie going, "Oh my God, that was awesome!" And I walked right into a Will Urban buzzsaw.
Oh, he didn't like it?
He hated it.
I haven't seen it, so I have no idea.
Like, I've seen it, and I think it's excellent.
Okay.
Colby.
It's such a like they just made this post-apocalyptic destroyed world like sadly. It was sadly beautiful. The cinematography is bar none.
Yeah,
it was so good.
Nothing was like, and then there's this. It's like literally you see the Empire State Building, but it's never like, and the Empire State Building has fallen, or there's the Statue of Liberty. Like half the stuff is like in the background and never actually featured. You're just like, oh my God, that's the Statue of Liberty they just passed, and stuff like that. I thought it was awesome. I thought it was very the plot to me was very interesting and didn't seem like it was, like a prefab or anything. It didn't seem like it was copying other things. I didn't recognize any of the plot twists, except at one moment I was like, oh my God, this is kind of like, and I'm not going to say because that might spoil it for some people who know about the movie, that I think it was a little bit like
Crying Game?
Yeah, it was just like the Crying Game. Damn it! Spoiler alert!
It's running out there.
And so there's Tom Cruise playing a woman. So there you go. No.
Okay, got it.
And I'm not a big Tom Cruise fan, but I forgot that was Tom Cruise on the movie screen. I thought he did a great job. And so that was my big thing. And then Defiance, which I've watched the first episode of. And what are you guys thinking? Anybody else watching Defiance?
Have you seen it, Colby?
I've got it DVR'd, but I have not seen it.
I've watched the first 3 episodes. So I watched.
A friend of mine recommended it.
Yeah, I watched the first 2 hour.
You're ahead of both of us, Russ. What are you thinking 3 episodes in?
So here's the thing. So watching the premiere, it's a 2 hour premiere, right? Yep. The first hour in, I was very nervous.
Yeah.
The second hour got good. And since then, I'm feeling like there's really good potential here. It kind of feels like they're a little bit ahead of the curve. Like if you remember, the very first season of Babylon 5 was kind of not so good.
So that was definitely kind of not so good.
But it had enough potential where we all kind of stuck with it. And then the later seasons of Babylon 5 were off the charts amazing.
Yeah.
I think this is doing better than the first season of Babylon 5 did. And I think there's real potential here. There's also real potential to screw it up. But I think they've got a pretty good setup here for something interesting. That's what I think.
Yeah. Well, that's how I felt at the end of the first episode, which is all I've seen so far.
And the CGI gets better. So in the very first episode,
it's like it's sci-fi.
Yeah, in the very first episode, the CGI was pretty bad. In the second episode, there are parts of the CGI they get really, really good. They're still working on animating stuff. They get but what I like about it though is they're getting in there, and if you just sort of let your disbelief get suspended there, there's really cool stuff like the fighting alien bugs and all kinds of craziness. But if you watch too carefully, like, that's kind of, you can tell there's a budget issue there. But I like where they're heading. I like all the aliens. I like the idea of Earth being terraformed and the whole thing. And I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of really cool background stuff that I like it when it's there and it's going to be supported eventually, and it's going to be internally consistent. But they don't say in the year 2342 the next 25 plot points all occurred in this order.
Yeah, it's cool backstory. I
think it's cool.
All right, so we're going along. I'm just going to quickly get on my list here. So I finished Heroes by Joe. I know I'm in the middle of it. I'm about 3/4 of the way through on Heroes.
Is it living to the?
So remember I started reading Red Country ahead of out of order. Red Country I was loving. Heroes I'm liking, but none of the cool characters are in this one. Right. So it's kind of like the story's good, but you don't have any of the characters you really love in there. So it's kind of, that's all the only downside. And we spoke about video games a little bit. I did get the new Star Trek video game. Have you tried this, Colby?
I haven't. I don't know anything about it, actually.
I don't know if you're a Star Trek fan. So I'm a huge Trek fan, and there's not really very many good Star Trek games. Very, very few.
I heard that they didn't send a copy out to anybody.
So that always makes me nervous. But I picked it up because I'm a Star Trek guy, and it's actually not bad. The dialogue and what they did was it's a co-op first-person shooter where you can play Kirk and Spock at the same time. So Kirk and Spock are always together, and either you can co-op with it, and two people can do it at once, or Spock's just there and you can give him orders as Kirk, or vice versa. And it's great because the banter between Kirk and Spock is excellent. And it's right out of the movies. They do a good job with it. And the dialogue when you're on the bridge is great. So far, it's good. It's not as polished as I would like. So there's definitely spots where the camera control is not optimal. It's the classic thing. And the aiming's not as accurate as you might like if you're a big Halo or Gears of War player and all this has worked perfectly. This game's got some rough edges there. But I think there's enough here if you're a Trek fan to get into it. I'm only 2 hours into the game. But it hasn't turned me off. I guess it's a ringing endorsement. But I like the banter and the dialogue and the stories.
Put that on the back of the box.
Right.
Hasn't turned me off yet.
Doesn't suck.
Russ Wakeland, D6 generation.
Right. Doesn't suck. I'm willing to keep playing Russ Wakeland. Right. So that's pretty much most of it. And I think that's achievements. We got to wrap it up because it's getting long.
Yeah, that was a long achievements.
Well, I blame Craig.
I blame Craig too.
I'll take the blame. I've got wide shoulders.
You're listening to the D6 generation. Born to game.
Hey, and now it's time to talk about Battlefoam.
Battlefoam.com.
Foam, that's the way that you're going to get your models from point A to point B and let them stay in one piece.
Oh, I just got my X-Wing foam, Craig.
It's
awesome. It's awesome. Loving it.
I just spent the weekend basically with the Battlefoam, all the Battlefoam boys and girls at Adepticon, and it was awesome. They are really a fun crew to hang out with, and it is just so funny to watch. And literally this year, because we got there early, I was able to watch them unload their crates, their giant crates, and just fill these shelves full of foam and bags and their new black label. I saw one of the giant black labels get sold.
Oh, nice.
It was quite intriguing.
Well,
I recommend that they actually come with dry ice sections inside them, so when it opens, it goes up, makes a
there you go.
The fog
comes out. That'd be awesome.
It was for a Forge World Thunderhawk.
Nice.
But that was a guy with a lot of money to just
Yeah, right.
It was cool. And just watching, it's like watching sharks eat giant carcasses of meat thrown into the water. Their shelves are just like every day they're just down and down and down until there's literally like nothing left on the shelves. Because this is without a doubt the best way to get your stuff from point A to point B, really.
And what amazes me about Battlefoam is all the awesome accessories too. Like now they have really high quality padded shoulder straps to snap to any of your existing bags. But this is the brilliant thing now. This is what makes Romeo so brilliant. He's now selling donut holes. Have you seen this, Craig?
No.
Okay. So think about Dunkin' Donuts for a minute, how brilliant they were, because they're making their donuts, and the old donuts used to have the holes pop out. What do you do with the holes in the donut? What if you sold them? Romeo has thought of the same thing. Now you can buy destroyed vehicle markers. These destroyed vehicle, I am not making this up. They're dirt cheap too. Destroyed vehicle markers for your favorite flyers. Guess what they're made out of? They are the shapes that are cut out of the foam to put the Thunderhawk into the foam. It's brilliant. It's brilliant, people. So it's brilliant. So if you want some of these foam markers, check them out. It's on the Battle Foam website. They've got everything. I mean, you can imagine it. Like, don't forget, too, the custom foam tray creators out there. You go in there, you can make the exact tray you want, the exact shapes you want in there for any minutes you have. You can trace a miniature, send it in there. They'll cut it the exact shape for you. They will make the foam fit anything from Colossals from War Machine all the way down to really small Flames of War models. It doesn't matter. They can keep it safe. They can keep it perfect, and they can get it to the battlefield intact.
Yep.
And that is battlefoam.com.
.com.
And now, what's in the news? With the shout-out, The Stink, one of the first Wednesday events at Gen Con. It will be turning 10 this year at Gen Con 2013. Help make it special. Donate at Indiegogo.com/stink10. And now, the news. A lot of exciting news this week. Let's get it up here. First of all, a new expansion for the Civilization board game from Fantasy Flight Games. Oh, one of my favorites. Wakeland loves this game, one of his favorite 4Xs. The new expansion is going to bring to, of course, the Sid Meier's Civilization game from Fantasy Flight more intricate combat involving remaining health now, a new stat on the combat cards. You're going to be implementing social policies now. There are 12 new land tiles, making the world even more interesting. There are new relics, 6 new wonders, and 6 new civilizations to play, including Genghis Khan of the Mongols, some Aztecs, Napoleon, who knows, all kinds of excitement. Check that out if you're a Civ fan. Also, Fantasy Flight, other big news. On May the 4th, may it be with you, of course, is Star Wars Day. May the 4th, Fantasy Flight Games also announced the newest expansion coming to the X-Wing miniature game. Very exciting objects here. First of all, the Lambda-class shuttle, the little tri-wing shuttle where the wings fold up. Looks really awesome. The B-Wings coming out. The TIE Bomber come out. And perhaps most exciting, oh yeah, baby, Kyle Katarn's HWK 290, a.k.a. the Moldy Crow, will be coming out. A little ship from the Jedi Knight game. If video game ships are coming out, that can give us hope for things like the TIE Defender and other hotness. Can't wait. Let's see. Also, have you seen the S.H.I.E.L.D. trailer for Joss Whedon's new S.H.I.E.L.D. series coming to ABC? Oh, my goodness. If you have not seen the trailer, just stop what you're doing. Go over to YouTube, Google S.H.I.E.L.D. trailer, watch it, and come back. We'll wait. Seen it? Isn't it awesome? All right, easy, Wakeland. Next up. Speaking of trailers here, let's see. This has nothing to do with that, but in any case, Disney has announced that now that they've acquired LucasArts and are technically shutting down LucasArts as a development studio, that Electronic Arts will now be doing future Star Wars games. So if you're Electronic Arts fans, I guess that's great. If you're not so much, well, here's hoping. They do have BioWare and some other great licenses, software houses, so we'll see what happens there. And speaking of software, a bunch of new hot games coming to iPad that Wakeland is particularly enjoying. Oh, these are great. Like what, Wakeland? Well, Space Command. Oh, yes, Space Command is excellent. This game is a 8-bit sort of Star Trek Command Your Ship game. If you've played FTL, Faster Than Light, on Steam, you would be familiar with Space Command. Check this out. It's a little more advanced version of that. Very interesting. It's on the iPad as well as Steam and Android soon. Also, Leviathan's Warships is a Navy combat game featuring sort of dystopian wars-esque style ships with shield generators and advanced weaponry. Pretty cool stuff. Also, of course, if you're a fan of the Eclipse board game, well, guess what? Eclipse is now out on iPad, and it does play indeed excellent. So a great asynchronous play as well. Check out Eclipse on the iPad. Also, Sid Meier's Ace Patrol is out. If you are a Wings of War fan, you need to play this game. It's basically Wings of War on the iPad. It is free, but then you buy more campaigns and stuff for $1 a campaign. Not a bad deal on that one either. So check those out. Great iPad gaming there. Some of those are on Android also, but most of them are iOS. Sorry if you're an Android fan. Okay, if you're looking for something to read, summer's coming. Maybe you're going to go to the beach soon, do a little camping, whatever. The Skull Island Expeditions have been cranking out some books. They just came out with Way of Cain, the novel. I think it's a novella still, but they're getting longer. But Way of Cain looks excellent. If you're into Cain the Caster, want to know about him, check that out. Oh, and speaking of miniature games, how about a little bit of Malifaux? You know, Malifaux's second edition was announced. All kinds of excitement coming down the pike on that. They're looking to streamline the game, add some new mechanics, keep the game fast, fun, exciting, easy to pick up, and still have the depth it has today. All kinds of news about that. If you want to know more about Malifaux 2, go check out their website, but also you may want to listen to the next episode. It's called Foreshadowing. Easy, don't give it all away. Anyway. And if you were surprised about Malifaux 2nd Edition coming out, here's something else that might be surprising to you. Defiance, that new show over on Sci-Fi, it doesn't stink. Yeah, right, as Wakeland's telling you, it actually is pretty good. If you're not watching Defiance, check it out. And what's the best part, Wakeland? No muskets. Yes, there are no muskets in Defiance. Also, if you are a fan of Robotech, and if you aren't, you should be, of course, the Robotech tactical miniature combat game for the RPG is coming out. It's on Kickstarter now. It's just about to wind down. Probably by the time you hear this, it's just about ending. But they put up the preview rules over there. So if you're interested in how this miniature war game is going to work, you can go over there to the Kickstarter, search for Robotech, and check that out. Looks pretty exciting. Keeps it straightforward. Not too complicated, but enough, just enough in there to make it fun. Oh, and more big news. So much big news today. Battlefront is taking over Dust. Yes, Battlefront Miniatures, the guys that do Flames of War and also own Gales Force 9. They are taking over the Dust Warfare license. So if you were a fan of Dust Warfare from Fantasy Flight Games, that will be moving over to Battlefront Miniatures. Very interesting. Not a lot of details yet, just that they're taking it over, and Fantasy Flight enjoyed their ride with it. I guess we'll have to fingers crossed, but since Battlefront is an experienced miniature gaming company, hopefully this means good things for Dust fans. And finally, Infinity is going to be at Feast of Blades in no small measure. So this October, there's a convention called Feast of Blades. If you want more information on Feast of Blades, check out feastofblades.com. But a bunch of the guys from Corvus Belli, the company that actually makes Infinity, are going to be over there, including Carlos, one of the main minds behind it all. So if you're interested in all that good stuff, check it out. Feast of Blades is also another very miniature-focused convention, much like Adepticon. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, check it out. And if you are an Infinity player, you want to check that out. They have a 54-player Infinity Grand Tournament going on there. And Corvus Belli will be awarding some amazing prizes. But they can't announce exactly what it is yet, but apparently it's going to be pretty darn cool. So again, that's at feastofblades.com. And that's what's in the news. Hey, now it's time to talk about our friends at Conquistador Games. Conquistador! Craig, I finally got to break out the new science and get it to the table the other day, and man, was it cool.
Is it?
It is. It is the Founding Fathers. It is easily the Founding Fathers game of science. No doubt about it. I've mentioned it before, but it's so cool because
that's quite a high bit of praise.
It's great. Well, we talk about a lot on Conquistador. We say, they're dedicated to theme and they make sure that the games are very immersive. And this game does it. I mean, I played it with our friend Joel. You know how Joel is with role playing, and we were so into the role playing of these scientists, and it was great because I was playing Newton, and of course Newton is really good with and each of the scientists have their own little things. Some of them are better at research, some of them are better at experimentation, some of them are better at publishing. And what's cool about the game is the main game board is a giant tech tree. Okay, and each of you is working on researching different things, and there's different areas of science you can research, like mathematics and astronomy and physics. But then within that, it goes from the bottom to the top, where you research logarithms, and then maybe you work on the calculus, and then you work on the theory of gravity. What's that?
Do you have to know how to actually do any of that stuff?
No. Fortunately, you don't. You just say, I'm going to do a research action and get some research on there, and then you put your cubes on the areas where you research. But then what happens, which is really interesting, is if I have to choose now, in order to get prestige, which is the victory points in the game, I have to publish. But the problem is, as soon as I publish something I know, everybody else at the table now gets that technology and can use it to research something farther.
That's cool.
So you have to decide, am I going to publish now and get those victory points, or am I going to wait and have the advantage of the only one that knows that to move to the next level and then try to publish later, but at the risk that someone else will get ahead of me and catch up to me before then, not leverage it. So you have to really decide when you're going to time to publish and when not. And it captures the theme perfectly, right? It's exactly what happens. So a lot of fun. I cannot recommend this game highly enough. The new science is fantastic.
That sounds awesome.
Really, really great game. Very straightforward worker placement mechanics, but really, really good. Nice cards that add a lot of little stuff too, like happens like all of a sudden, like, they call it like field snobbery, and a card will come up, and that unless you've already got some research done in astronomy, you can't do any astronomy research this term because the club is like, no new boys in the club this month. It's kind of that kind of thing. It's just really, really cool, really the kind of stuff you hear about when you research science, if you're doing that kind of thing. And you're going to learn all about the different sciences, the different scientists, but you don't have to. It's like Founding Fathers. You don't have to know any of that to play the game and have fun. Great little game, great fun. Conquistador Games. What you want to do? Where do you go to find out more about Conquistador Games, Craig?
If you wanted to find out more about Conquistador Games, you would most likely go to CQ Games, Russ, of course. What else would it be?
Of course you would. So head on over to CQ Games and get all the information on their latest games, Tomorrow, The New Science, Road to Enlightenment, and all that good stuff.
Indeed. And of course, we're talking about Conquistador!
You're listening to the D6 generation. Born to game.
Hi, and welcome back. And so we've got Colby here, and we thought, there's a bit of news that everybody may or may not be aware of. And it starts with this commercial that's been on pretty much every 10 to 15 minutes on pretty much every channel I've been watching for the last month or so.
Right.
Where there's this big giant guy. I don't even know what's going on with this big giant guy. And there's obviously some sort of city that's in the air. And there's like dirigibles. And this guy that looks like an awesome cowboy. And he's got multiple different weapons. And of course, there's this girl that's about to be hanged by these weird looking, religious looking guys. And I've never played any of these games before. Although I know that they're supposed to happen underwater. So I'm kind of confused. But other than that, I've been like intrigued by this, thinking, oh, it'd be awesome if that was a movie because I'd go see it in a heartbeat. And then lo and behold, Plaid Hat Games is making a board game out of Bioshock Infinite.
I know.
That is correct.
Here we are. So we have him locked in a small cell, chained to a desk, and we thought, why not find out a couple things about what's going on? So Colby, what's going on?
Well, Plaid Hat Games is making a Bioshock Infinite board game, so we're really excited about that, and
we're done.
And that's what's going on.
Colby, that is fantastic. Now, this is Plaid Hat's first licensed product. Is that not correct?
That is correct. Yeah,
that's pretty exciting. So how did that happen? I mean, what made you guys decide A, we want to license something, and B, how the heck did you get Bioshock?
It was actually I got a call one day, and on the other line was Irrational Games saying, "Hey, we want to do a Bioshock board game."
And they came to you guys before like Hasbro and all those other people?
I don't.
That's awesome.
I don't know if they went to anybody else, but I know they didn't go to. I imagine they didn't go to Hasbro. Yeah. It turns out Ken Levine, the creator of the Bioshock, the lead creative guy, he is a huge fan of board games, so he knows his board games.
So he knows who to go for the good stuff. And
exactly.
Well, he knows that he doesn't want to go and do a Hasbro game. I think he knows that he didn't want to be mass market. He's a fan of hobby board games.
Right. Awesome.
You know what I mean?
That's great.
He wasn't interested in like, well, hey, let's put this on the mass market and make our licensing fee. His interest, and I hate to put words in the man's mouth, but I had a conversation with him, and his interest was more of, I want to do this because I think it would be really cool because I love board games, and that was very much the intent that he carried and that carried through with, and ended up having us do it.
That's really cool.
We're really excited about it.
That's so cool that they reached out to you like that. That's fantastic. Now, do you happen to know, is he a fan of your work? Is he like a huge Summoner Wars guy or something? Or did he just ask around and everybody's like, gotta call Colby? Or do you know how he ended up with Plaid Hat, or reached out to you guys first? Or?
Well, like I said, I think he knows the board game industry somewhat. I think he did do some reaching out to other people who know the industry. And again, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but kind of our assumption when amongst ourselves when we're talking about it is that they felt that we were doing good work, and they felt that we were kind of up and coming and growing fast, and we're the kind of company that, given this opportunity, would kind of seize it with both hands and make it everything our company was doing for the next year or so, or a big part of what we're doing. It would consume a lot of our attention. It wouldn't just be another project that we were doing.
Well, that's awesome, and so that's fantastic.
When did that phone call occur?
It's been at least a year and a half ago now.
Okay.
Wow.
So were you working on this before like the video game came out?
Yeah, that's kind of one of the interesting stories of the development of this board game is, to my knowledge, it's the first ever board game to be based on a video game property, or any property really, where that property still was in development. So there were lots of story elements, lots of key critical elements of what makes up this license that weren't even in place when we started working on it.
So how big was the stack of NDAs you had to sign?
It was a pretty thick NDA, but I've signed NDAs for Hasbro before. I've done freelance work for Hasbro.
You're a pro, so you're a pro. So did you get to actually play the game early, or did you go to the development studios and get to see stuff before anybody else did, and kind of get in and try to get? I mean, you must have to get a feel for what the game was going to be about and all that stuff.
Yeah, back a year and a half ago, after that initial call, we set up a second call where it was my first time to talk to Ken, and that was really exciting because I really respect him as a creative force, and then we got to go out and actually meet with the team and meet with Ken, and we discussed kind of what we wanted the game to be and what we didn't want the game to be, and we went over our options. I talked about my design theories and what I really felt like this game should bring to the table, and we came away from that meeting feeling really great. We sealed the deal there. Mm-hmm. We signed off on the contracts, and they were really excited about the things we had to say, and we were really kind of all on the same page. So it was an exciting meeting, but that was the first time we got a chance to hear about the storyline, hear about some of the main points, and we got to see the mechanical George Washington with the minigun for the first time there before anybody else had seen him.
The Patriot, that's awesome. Yeah. That's fantastic. Now, did you? I'm always curious. I think I ask this of every designer that comes on the show. Like, what were the key things you tried to distill? So, like, what were some of the highlights when you guys sat down at the table for the first time? What were sort of the essences, the key points that just had to be incorporated in the game? Was there already a short list in his head or in your head, or I guess you were kind of just. I mean, obviously, probably knew the original Bioshock, but you're just trying to, get your head around Infinite at that point. How did you guys come up with that initial list?
Well, we kind of went in there with three directions that we could take it, and I knew which direction I wanted to take it, and but wanted to come in presenting options, and one direction was that we make it from Booker and Elizabeth's point of view, and we tell their story in board game format. We basically take the video game, we translate it into a board game.
Right.
Another was that we take and we make a game that could exist inside of the world of Columbia. So maybe it's something the founders create for their kids to play that help, teach them racism against the Vox Populi, a propaganda piece.
Right. Yeah, that would have sold really well, Colby. I'm sure that would have been a hit.
Where you're, maybe like if you played the Bioshock Infinite game, maybe like a Duke and Dimwit game. We didn't know who those were at that time, but you get the idea. Something set in that world. Right. And then the third one was to make a game, but take it outside of just Booker and Elizabeth. We wanted them to be there. They're the stars, but scale it back, make it more about the world as a whole, and then you can see more and have other pieces of the puzzle that weren't necessarily in the video game.
Right. So sort of the meta of what's going on in the world, because you get that feeling playing the video game that there's sort of more going on here beyond Booker and Elizabeth, so your board game's sort of exposing, or the third option.
And that's that choice C was the direction we went, but we also talked about we wanted to make a game that was accessible to some extent. We wanted to try to build complexity in there without it. We wanted to try to build depth in there without tacking on a bunch of complexity. Right. But at the same time, we didn't want this to be a kind of a throwaway mass market game. It had to have some meat on its bones, and we just discussed like we wanted story beats in the game. The Bioshock games are known for their story, and we wanted to be able to tell some of that story. But mostly, we just wanted to give players a chance to live in that world and I think we really did it. It's when you're playing the board game, it's just a totally different viewpoint from the video game. Booker and Elizabeth are still running around, they're still doing stuff, but your whole perception of Booker and Elizabeth changes pretty quick.
Right.
You don't quite know why they're doing what they're doing. You just know that they're giant pains, and you want them dead. Right. And
so it's kind of cool. You're the perspective of I don't want to use the word bad guys, because if you've played a Bioshock game, whether you played the first one or the latest one, you never know who the bad guys are, even at the end of either game. And it sounds like you're going to give that world. And Craig, you'd mentioned, you've seen these commercials, right? And it sounds like an interesting world, but you're not a video game guy. Does this sound like something that would kind of draw a way to get experience with what those crazy things in the commercials are in a different format?
Well, I mean, I'm looking right now at the page, at the web page, and I'm recognizing the big giant guy who fights in the commercial. So that's cool.
Yeah, Colby, was there any thought to, when you're building this, was it what was the angle? We're going to make this as sort of an awesome appeal, like a work of love for those who love the video game, or was it that plus, is there a way to, was the angle also, hey, can we get some of those hobby board gamers into this world, and maybe they'll step across and actually try the video game, or was there any thought to that kind of angle?
I think that there was some of both. I think the main drive was, let's write a love letter to the fans of Bioshock. Let's do original art. Let's put them in this world that they love. And then I think it was very secondary that this is also just a rich theme game. This is a theme that you don't see a lot of. It's a very original feeling theme. So it has that potential to draw in people to the license who haven't experienced it elsewhere. So both I think were in consideration, but our drive while we were making it was very much about how can we do justice to this great license.
Well, very cool. So, Craig, let us know as we're going through here if this is appealing to you as a non-Bio. I got to say, as a Bioshock fan myself, I'm of course all in already at this point. But you had me at Plastic Bird, though. Really, to be honest. So you mentioned, Colby, sort of exploring the world in a new way. And before we get into the details of how the game's going to work, like, what is that? What are we going to get to see as someone who's played the game already? Can't wait for the DLC to come out. I want to see more of the story. We've already seen the most diehard Bioshock fans have seen the end now, and they're kind of like, oh wow, okay. What's the new way here? Is it not? I don't want to use the word just, but is the perspective really from the two major warring factions and their point of view, and maybe why they're not necessarily right or wrong, or is it a third thing you're giving out? Are you giving out more backstory, or how is more of the story being told in the game?
Well, I think that the story is being told in a different kind of way. You have that video game as this great big. Most of the people who are coming to this probably have played the video game, not all, but a lot, and so you have that as this great big backdrop for the game as you come in. And you're experiencing the world in a different way, and once you step into the shoes of one of these factions, it's very easy to get lost in it, and what their ideas are, and you just start to role play that, or at least we did very naturally, and the world starts to look different with those glasses on, because all of a sudden this Booker's just this problem, and that other faction is completely in the wrong, obviously, for all these long list of reasons. Right. I mean, they're murderers. We do a lot of, there's lots of flavor text in there. There's an actual Elizabeth timeline, and there's 3 different ones, and we try to do, we don't tell really like specific story beats. Mm-hmm. There are story beats in there, but we tried to go a little general on them, so that way we could do some more emergent storytelling. Yeah, let the gameplay tell a story, and make these vague enough that that when this story beat lands, players can incorporate it into the story that's being told and coming out from their war.
Yeah, it's What's really interesting too, and I'm curious to see how you guys leverage this before we get into the components and all the cool mechanics, which we're going to go there. Is one of the main elements of the game, and this is a little bit of a spoiler, but you kind of get this feeling early on is in the game. There's definitely the whole alternate reality, multiple universe thing going on, right? And did you guys? I mean, you could have easily said, this board game is just another alternate reality of the game you played, but it sounds like with the alternate versions of Elizabeth and stuff, is it really that each play of the game could be an alternate reality, or is that alternate reality stuff threaded in while you're playing the game, or is that even addressed in the board game? Or can you say at this point?
we don't really address it, but you put that very well. I wish you had said that about 2 months ago. I wrote that right in the rule book.
All right, so it could be alternate reality. We don't know, but that's the best part of the game. We don't know.
Yeah, well, one of the games that got brought up in those first meetings was War of the Ring. We really loved that game as a licensed game because we felt like it was able to kind of tell an alternate story, a story that we all know and love, and here's an alternate version of it that kind of played out in your game. And so we tried to do some of that. We didn't have as much access to the game in early development as a War of the Ring does, because it's afterwards and it's based on books of literature. So I don't think that there's as many dive deep moments of like, hey, they could have gone to and went to this elf kingdom instead and recruited help there, and et cetera, et cetera. Nor did we want to make it as heavy as a War of the Ring, but it was definitely we aspired to make a game where you felt like you were telling an alternate reality version of these events that you knew and loved.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, I think it's also cool that, because you mentioned War of the Ring, and I was thinking also of Age of Conan, in that, one of the challenges of making a Conan game they talked about was the fact that everybody wants to play Conan. So the way they solved that was nobody plays Conan. He just kind of wanders around, and sometimes he works for you, and sometimes he doesn't. Is that sort of the same angle you've got going on here with DeWitt and Elizabeth? Is there sort of a spoiler, if you will, for everybody, but that kind of hop around the board and cause trouble?
Yeah, early on we had even considered kind of an asynchronous. Somebody plays Booker kind of element.
Yeah.
That ended up getting worked out just as a couple of our prototypes had it, but it ended up getting worked out because it just wasn't working properly, and the game system that we ended up with didn't support it well enough. It would have been really wedged in there. So instead, we made him autonomous because he had to be in there, and it works. It works well because it almost gives him a kind of character. At times he'll be he'll show up on your space, and he'll be angry, and he'll come in and murder all your guys.
Right.
You're like, what the flip, Booker? What are you doing? And just that's what I'm talking about, that alternate viewpoint of this guy who just showed up in your city and started killing your peoples. Well,
that's what's awesome, because it matches theme perfectly, because in the game at alternate times you're working for different sides, you're causing trouble on both sides of the fence, exactly. and sometimes your own side of the fence is just very complicated. Let me ask you this, because one of the things that intrigued me, I really like the direction here, because I think I love co-op games as much as the next guy. I'm a huge co-op game fan, but at the same time, it's nice to see that this is actually going to be sort of a 4-player, sort of conquest game, if you will, or you can elaborate on exactly what it is. But there's 4 different players now, and it talks about on your press release there, it talks about the fact that it's really the Vox Populi versus the folks in the city there. But how do you get 4 factions out of those 2 main factions? What's the sort of the justification behind that?
I'm sorry, you're going to have to repeat that. I was reading.
Oh, sure, Colby. I see how it is. So
I was reading Craig's note.
Oh, Craig's distracting you. I see how it is. See, this is the kind of professional co-host I have right now.
Distract me.
So we're just talking about the fact that I was talking about the fact that there's 4 factions in the game, right?
Right.
And you can fight each other, but in the computer game, there's really the 2 major factions. So how do you sort of factor out the fact there's two? How do you what's the background behind the fact there's 4 factions fighting instead of just 2?
So it's 2 factions fighting. The 4-player game is a team game.
Okay.
You can tell that just by looking at the website.
It's 2 or 4 players.
Yeah.
In the 4-player game, in the 2-player game, obviously 1 player's Vox Populi, 1 player's Founders fight. In the 4-player game, 2 players are Founders. One's takes all the dark blue units, one takes all the light blue units, and then the other's Vox Populi. One takes all the red, and one takes all the dark red units.
Oh, very cool.
And then you work together as a team to complete your objectives and try to secure a victory.
Nice. So let's talk about components, because Craig was already raving about these. Craig, looking at that now, what do you think about the components? Just looking at what's on the webpage
looks
there.
Pretty darn cool. I mean, right off the bat, like I said, I recognize the big guy with the big giant arm that looks like it telescopes, and I have no idea what that giant winged looking monstrous mutant looking thing is, but it looks damn cool. And it's interesting to me because the 2 figures, who are the 2 central characters in the video game?
DeWitt and Elizabeth are the 2 central characters.
And like judging from the TV commercial, they're supposed to be the heroes.
You play DeWitt from his perspective the entire game in the video game.
Yeah, and they're not even on our box cover. They're the main roles for us are definitely those 2 factions.
Right.
So on our box cover, we have Daisy Fitzroy, who is the leader of the Vox Populi, and Zachary Comstock, who's the leader of the Founders. And then we've got the little red hooded Vox Populi unit back there, and then the big handyman unit there as well on our box cover.
Colby, are you sure that DeWitt's not on the cover? Just saying.
Am I sure that DeWitt's not on the cover?
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose maybe he's back there on a skyline really small.
I'm just saying he might be on the cover. Just saying. Just throwing it out there. So, all right. For those who
Spoiling anything.
I'm not spoiling anything. I'm just saying.
Anyway, what I was going to say is I think it's very cool that the 2 quote unquote heroes from the video game, because I'm hearing the term shades of gray keep popping up, that they still look very heroic. They're in gray plastic, so they look different from everybody else, and they're kind of heroic. But I love the idea of a game where you're just trying to contend with this other side, and then these 2 people keep popping up, like messing with your plans and screwing things up, and there's another medium telling the same story from their point of view. So, I mean, I think I don't know Bioshock, either the original flavor or Infinite, but it seems like an awesome idea and a concept and a direction to approach the whole thing from.
Yeah, I think what a license can do is it can really it can inform you and focus you, and I think that's what Bioshock did for us. I feel like it did a lot to, of course, when you have a really good license, people coming to that license have some expectations, and they bring with them, backstory and visuals and all that to the game. Even with a license of this size, Craig, even though you haven't played the video game and are a video game guy, a commercial is on enough that you even have some visuals. I mean, what video game could have could show you the action that visually as we have to take advantage of with all the marketing and the video game and all that. They have so many super duper creative people over there, and we just get to take advantage of so much of their effort, here with the board game.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you this about the components, because there are so many cool ones, and it feels like you slurped out like all the key ones. How did you guys? Was there a lot of back and forth on exactly which stuff would be plastic and which wouldn't, and how did you kind of work that out? Were you involved a lot with the video game guys on those choices, or did you guys just have free reign to pick and choose what was going to be the call out bits, or how did you make those decisions?
They gave us quite a bit of free range, but we definitely wanted to work with them, and we discussed earlier what were the talking points. One of the talking points was this game has to be awesome. It has to be a spectacle. Yeah. And so we knew we wanted to do plastic, and we wanted to do lots of plastic, and we wanted to do lots of different molds, and we knew that was going to be an expense, but this is this is kind of our chance to shine kind of project,
Yeah. Well, you definitely didn't mess around. 52 different minis in there, man, and you got some of the big ones in there. Like the it feels like you got you got the bird in there, of course. You got the dirigible too. A couple really large faction pieces in there. What, were some of them harder to design? What were some of the tougher ones to build out and design, or was it all pretty normal for you guys?
They were hand sculpted.
Yeah.
Early on, we thought, well, we'll get like the video game files and we'll get the CAD files or something, and we'll have them use those to make the minis. And we quickly learned that working with a video game company while that company is making a multi-million-dollar video game, you don't just get the assets you want when you ask for them, and it's understandable. Right. And at some point, it was just kind of like, man, we got to get these minis done because this is one of the longest development things, and so I turned to Chad Hoverter, who did the minis for Mice and Mystics. Yeah. And he did the minis for Dungeon Run, and he did the minis for City of Remnants. Yeah. And I just said, hey man, we've got this license, and he was a friend already. I had known him for years. But can you come through on this? And he said he could. He regretted it later, but he said he could, and he did. Nice. I'm sure he put in a lot of long hours on that. And he was a sculptor, I wasn't, so I don't know exactly what his biggest challenges were, but when you're looking at all these minis, they look really detailed, and yet it's really difficult to appreciate just how detailed they are, because that scale is when you look at these on the page, you think this is a standard size scale. No, this is like the miniature, like Risk Minis style scale. Yeah, right. It's dudes on a map game.
Right. Yeah. Nice. So he did all that just from what concept art that you guys had?
Yeah, it was all from concept art or game models or what we could scratch together for him, and based on that, those games that I named off that he's done for us. Yeah. That's pretty much all he's done professionally in sculpting. Wow.
Well, it's fantastic. I mean, there's no doubt the Mice
he was able to take these iconic characters, right, who obviously matching visuals for is very, very important. Right. And I think did a really excellent job.
Yeah. I mean,
that Songbird looks like Songbird.
Songbird looks awesome. I mean, exactly. They look fantastic on the page.
The big giant wings?
The Songbird, yes. Big giant wings.
His name is Songbird, yeah.
Tell me what the deal is. What is a songbird?
Songbird is this giant flying mechanical contraption, and it's sentient, and it is Elizabeth, who is one of the main key characters of the game. It's her protector, and her jailer. Really, they keep her in this jail in this tower, and that is the creature that they have created to keep her there.
And it's controlled.
And so when you roll in his booker and bust her out, he's not happy.
He's not happy, and it's controlled by song. Comstock controls it by song, and that's why it's a songbird. Not too much of a spoiler there, hopefully.
Singing?
Sorry. Musical tones.
Bro, I was going to say, or is song some guy? I mean,
so yeah, because there's definitely some bioengineering going on. Like those big guys aren't robots; they're part people. Like there's this whole thing going on there.
Right. It all centers kind of around this character named Jeremiah Fink, and he's one of the leader cards you can be in the board game.
Oh, cool.
And he's this Henry Ford type, where he builds this giant spectacle of an industry, and he's kind of obsessed with timing. He's obsessed with efficiency, and the handyman is making a more efficient human.
Yeah.
I imagine Songbird and Fink must be linked. I don't know. Maybe the DLC will tell us.
Yeah, maybe later. Right. So Colby, before we run out of time, I got to ask you a little about the mechanics. I don't know how much you're willing to tell me, but I'm gonna ask you as much as you'll let me. So are the two factions? Are they asymmetric? Do they have unique powers? And how is that delivered in the game mechanically? If that is the case.
So at the start of the game, each player gets to choose a leader, and there's 4 leaders for either side. So we usually, I believe the game, the rule book has you choose them randomly, and you end up with a leader for your faction, and he has a special power that is always on, kind of thing.
Okay.
And so whatever leader I am, this game will help kind of determine my strategy a little bit, or give me some kind of edge. And then you each have a full deck of cards, and in that deck of cards are a bunch of different characters. And you'll have like a shotgunner or a flakman or a skyrider, different things like that. But you also have somebody like Songbird or somebody like the Airship, which is a one-off. And the Vox Populi deck and the Founder deck are both different. They have some units that they share that are in common, that this is the Vox version of the Shotgunner, this is the Founder version of the Shotgunner. But they also have unique cards that are unique to them. And then each play, your deck becomes unique too, because you have this upgrade sheet, and there are a few things that you can do, and every time you do them, like win a battle or pay 3 silver eagles, which is the money in the game, you can make an upgrade to one of your cards. And you can either unlock its ability, or you can add 1 to one of its 3 stats. And so your deck starts to, despite it not having any cards coming in or out of it, becomes customized. So I can customize my deck towards influence if I feel that influence is really important, and that's where the game is going to be won or lost, or towards combat, or towards silver eagles, towards producing money.
Oh, very cool. Now, Craig, you may not know this, but I don't know if they show this in the commercial or not, but another thing that makes the Bioshock universe unique is this concept of vigors, which are basically sort of these bio-magical powers that you can basically drink this stuff and gain them, whether it's shooting fire or...
Lifts the guys up and throws them at the big giant thing. Yeah, that's in the commercial.
So, Colby, are those factored into these cards as well?
Yeah, you have vigors in those cards, and
awesome.
And they you can use them to varying degrees of effectiveness.
Awesome. And it sounds like they level up by little pips, just like you would do in the video game, which is awesome. Now, another big sort of a signature item to Bioshock Infinite in particular is this concept of skyline. So, Craig, for and for listeners who aren't familiar with the video games, go ahead.
Wait.
Yeah.
From the website, I know that's like the big kind of cable car sort of monorail thingy that goes all through this big floating city.
Yes.
Heck yeah, it does.
It does, right? Because every element of the city is a different, like little floating. They're not on clouds. It's actually on some atomic principle that floats the different elements of the city. But the buildings are all connected by these little monorail things, and they're used to deliver cargo. But they develop these little handheld doohickeys that you can jump in the air, clack it on the rail, fly around as just a single individual, then jump off. And part of the video game is while you're hanging on the rail, flying along, you can actually zoom in and shoot people, and it goes into kind of a slow motion bullet time mode. So there's a lot of combat jumping off and onto the rails and all that kind of cool craziness. How is that factored into the board game?
So, that was one of the first things we saw in the video game that we were like, man, that is such a cool concept. The idea of, from those early, they had these early demo reel kind of videos where it's showing this is what the game was gonna be like, and you'd see him hop on the rails and get to a better position, and so all of our prototypes, of which there were multiple as we tried to find the right game, incorporated the rails because they were clearly one of the coolest systems to make use of, and from the very, very early on, we knew that we wanted to make the rails a press your luck mechanism.
Oh, cool!
Because we felt like, in board games, that was the mechanism we could employ that could most closely mimic a sense of thrill, a sense of danger. And so these rails sprawl all throughout the game, and in the game, you can move your guys to an adjacent space. Well, the problem is that the board is made up of different islands, and each island has a few spaces on it. But if you want to get to a new island, you need to ride the rails over. So in order to ride the rails, you roll these 3 dice and the skyline dice, and as long as at least one of them shows a thumbs up symbol, you're good. If they all show numbers, you have to discard that many cards or the guy on the rail dies.
Oh, nasty.
And so the cool thing about that is that I mentioned earlier that when you're moving, you can just move to an adjacent space. If you're moving on the rails, you move to a new rail space, you roll those dice. If you're safe, you can get off, or you can move to another space, and you can keep doing that. You can keep moving. So, Craig might be all the way across the board, and he's left his leader by himself, thinking that, all of his guys are all the way across the board, and then all of a sudden up pops the objective to destroy an opponent's leader, and you get it in your head that you're going to ride the rails all the way over there. You can do that. It comes at this great risk, because once you start chaining those rolls together, it's more likelihood that you're going to fall from the sky. But you could totally go after his big leader that way.
Nice. Now, you mentioned a couple things. You talked about the fact that the board is spread out, and there's all these little floating islands, which sound just like the game, and you get the great skylines to move around, so obviously there's some incentive to move around. And you mentioned a different objectives are going to pop up, like kill your opponent's leader or kill one of the leaders. What's sort of the way you win the game? Is it all about area control? Is it a victory point system, and there's different objectives that pop up, or how does that sort of, what are you trying to do, and how do you do it?
There's a victory point system. First player to 10 victory points wins the game. You gain victory points by controlling areas of the board, but additionally, each round, an objective card pops up, and it will offer a certain amount of victory points if you can meet its condition. And then each round, a new objective card is going to pop up, and they'll all stay out there until somebody's claimed them. And then once a player has claimed them, then no other player can. And you're between those objectives and controlling area, you're trying to be the first to 10. And then there's an event deck that plays throughout the game, and you're spending influence to try to influence those events in your fashion. And in those event decks, there are these Elizabeth symbols that pop up that move an icon down an Elizabeth timeline track, and that kind of tells her story and the things that she's doing and the effects it's having on the world. And and once that gets to its bottom thing, it's usually something pretty drastic that's going to hurdle the game towards the end or end it. And if the game is ended because the event deck ran out, then the player with the most victory points wins at that point. But
that's cool.
Really, it's considered a Booker and Elizabeth win more than anything.
But it's not. But it's not a semi-co-op. In other words, you're technically still the winner if you got the most points at that stage.
Right.
That's interesting. That's cool. So, and it sounds like that's really neat too, because it gives a lot of replayability. Because as you mentioned before, there's different Elizabeth story, like 3 different stories for Elizabeth, right? So that's going to affect the game differently every time too.
Right, and then your leaders help, and then the upgrade system all helps on replayability. How
do major pieces like the Songbird or the airship factor? Are they just really powerful combat pieces, or do they have some other abilities as well?
The figures are leaders, so they roll the best dice. But unlike the other figures, they don't have to roll when they're moving on the skyline to simulate flight. They just get to move 2 spaces on the skyline for free.
Oh, nice.
And in the team game, control of that leader, the Songbird or the airship, is shared between the players. So they can really move twice as much, move in an attack in that.
Nice.
In the team game, because both of you can utilize them as part of your actions. And then and they're also represented in players' decks as like your one of card that is really powerful.
Oh, very cool. And you already mentioned how victory conditions work. What's the play length typically that you guys have found to be, or what was the target play length for the game?
We didn't want it to go super long. I think we have 60 to 90 minutes on the box, and that's kind of we did the standard industry thing, and that's when you have players who know the game and are moving along. So first play will go longer than that, but we try to land it right in there, about an hour and a half. We feel like that's where the game kind of leaves you wanting more. It leaves you satisfied, but leaves you wanting more.
Very cool. And the I know the MSRP on this thing is $85, which sounds like a really good price considering the amount of plastic you're getting in there and the artwork we've seen from the preview cards you've got on there and stuff. Do you guys have it? I know this is a tough question, but do you have any inkling of the release date? Is it? I know everybody's going to be excited after they hear this, and I'm excited right now. When can you give us a quarter at least, or when do you feel like it's going to be out?
It's right now it's looking like August.
Okay.
That might push to September. You know how these things go.
Yeah.
And it could be as early as late July that the pre-orders are shipping out.
Yeah.
That's kind of our hope. We're hoping pre-orders will be here by late July. We'll be able to ship those out so that way we can take it to Gen Con.
Yeah. See, fingers crossed for Gen Con, Colby. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I'm hoping. Oh, cool. Well, Colby, thanks so much. Now Craig, now that you've heard all this, does it make you interested, even though you're not a video game guy?
Well, I would go back to. I mean, I don't know the game. I don't really know the universe, so I would go back to the whole idea of what I think is awesome is rather than just we're gonna do a board game version of the video game. What you've done is like totally reversing it and going from the other direction. And I love the idea of playing these factions and having big mobs of guys, many of whom are falling off the skyline on a fairly regular basis. If you roll like me. I think it sounds really cool. The components look awesome, and I mean, now Colby, how much of the story could I gather from the game and the rule book? And is there going to be enough there for me to or someone who doesn't know this going in enough background to feed them, or is it pretty much more like it's a supplementary game to the video game?
I would say it's more. We definitely took more of a supplementary type of angle. We didn't try to. I mean, we didn't try to take up space explaining a lot. We have the intro to the board game, but we kind of throw you into that world. And if you've played the video game or know the video game, you're going to more fully understand some of the things that are going on. But I don't think it is necessary to your enjoyment of the game either. It's just a good dudes on a map style game. Yeah,
that's kind of like I think that's the ideal approach to something like this, because it would double the size of your rule book or whatever if you were including all kinds of info and fluff and everything. But one of kind of like Battlestar Galactica, you don't need to know anything about it to enjoy the game. And my wife hates sci-fi, but she loves the game. I feel like this could be the same kind of game where Russ is going to get all kinds of cool, little Easter eggs and cool little ideas out of it. But I'm just the components look cool and the gameplay sounds awesome. And so it's going to appeal to me on that level. And at the same time, I'll be probably pestering Russ every few minutes. No, what does that mean? Where did that come from? Oh, cool. Now, what does that do? But so there's a richness there to be discovered beyond the game, but the game seems to me like it's a really cool gateway or introduction to it. I love the approach where you're taking these two factions and they're playing against each other, and the main characters are spoilers, sort of.
Yeah, we definitely wanted to play to the strengths of board games. I feel like you're really doing a disservice if you go in and say, hey, what was really great about this video game? Let's try to make that. Because there were a lot of things that the video game had in mind that were playing to the strengths of video games. And I feel like I don't want to pick any names out, but I feel like when a game tries to recreate a shooter video game or a shooter element to a video game, I haven't really experienced that being done really well, and I feel like there are reasons for that. It's very much about Twitch and things that video games do well, and so we definitely wanted to take the game to a place where we were playing off the strengths of board games.
Right.
I think this is a good fit for that, because really what's really fascinating about Bioshock, both the games. I didn't play the second one because it was by a different company, so I skipped it. But
same here.
But what's great about them is they it's almost like a book or a movie where it gets you into this universe, and there's a lot more in the universe going on. But it just sort of it's almost like the 10 to 20 hours it takes you to solve the game it almost feels like a tease. It's like, oh, I want to see more, and so this is just a great way to sort of immerse yourself, like you said, from a different angle. In this universe as well. So if you've played Bioshock or as Craig has then even seen it, and it really is that very sort of alternate reality steampunk thing that is obviously a really cool and evocative thing for a lot of us geeks out there. It's just another way to get into that kind of a universe. So I think it's a real fantastic opportunity. So, well, Colby, thanks so much for taking time to talk to us about Bioshock. I cannot wait till it comes out. I waited with bated breath, literally.
Hey, you and me both.
Cool.
I can't wait. I think it's going to be cool.
I'm really excited to be able to launch this on the public and really see the reaction, because, like I said, for the last year and a half, since we first talked to them, we felt like this was going to be a really big deal for Plaid Hat, and so excited to see that chapter begin.
Cool. Well, thanks for the details, Colby.
You're listening to the D6 generation. Born to game.
Hey, if you want to get a magazine of miniature wargaming, specifically historical miniature wargaming, you want to check out WSS Magazine, War Games, Soldiers, and Strategy Magazine. And this month's issue, Craig, number 66, this issue, A Change of Tide in the American Civil War, is the topic. And the opening picture, which looks fantastic, it's got a bunch of, looks like Southern Cav there charging along to battle. The opening blows of Gettysburg. They got complete campaign in this one. They got building 20 millimeter models and smaller, all about the Confederates this time around, how to deal with them. It just looks, again, Craig, the dioramas in this magazine are fantastic.
This is hands down the magazine for you if you're interested in historical gaming, period, or if you're curious about the historical side of wargaming in general. Because every magazine is not just a magazine full of awesome articles about hobbying and modeling and the different models options that you have available to you. It's also almost like a primer, if you will. Each issue is a primer on one particular theme, and this theme, of course, being the opening blows at Gettysburg. So it's going to be American Civil War related, and you're going to be looking at a couple different versions, and you're going to be looking at scenarios that have been designed specifically. And the cool thing about the scenarios, they're not game system specific. These are historical guys. They've come up with, this is how it really happened, and this is how you would recreate it in general broad strokes, so that you can fit it to your chosen system. But at the same time, it suggests systems for those of us who don't know where to go. If you're interested, you remember years ago when Rafe was like, you know what, I think I might be interested in historical wargaming.
Right.
This would have been the perfect thing for Rafe, because this is how it's going to ease you in. It's names that you recognize. Rick Priestley does a regular column for the magazine. It's a bunch of guys that both that you've known and that you don't know, but that have been around forever, and it's in such a tightly produced professional package that literally there is no historical wargaming magazine to compare to it. I think the way that it is, the way that it is, it makes everything accessible, and both for the newbie, which I would consider myself, or a veteran who's coming at it and he knows all this stuff. There's stuff in there for everybody. It's really amazing to me.
That's right. Check out WSSmagazine.com and put in the code D6G to save 15% on a subscription or back issues.
That's right.
This is Total Fangirl. Regular Jane most days, total fangirl when the moment strikes. Han shot first. Starbuck is a guy. And Lestat, now there's a vampire. Hey everyone, this is Nicole, your Total Fangirl. You can follow me on Twitter at Nicole Wakeland and check out my blog, TotalFangirl.com. This week's shout out to Chris, Tom, and Mr. Bistro. To the ends of the earth, to all three of you, and we will play Sentinels again. Happy gaming and long live Will Wheaton. If you live in the U.S., then this last weekend, you probably spent the day with your mom, or at least sent her some flowers, because it was Mother's Day. For us, this meant that we took my mom out to lunch at a restaurant that we thought she would enjoy, and we did have a wonderful time. And of course, I'm a mom, so it meant taking me out too, and I got some special treatment and breakfast in bed, and it was wonderful. When we were all done with lunch, though, we decided that it was a bit too early to just call it a day, so we came back to our place and we played a game. My mom is is a huge fan of Castle. Given a chance, I think she could probably be a brown coat because she thinks Nathan Fillion is awesome. So we played Castle the Detective card game because it's themed to the show and it's about detective work, which she loves, and we thought it might be a kick for her to play. So we broke out the game, set up all the tokens, and started playing, and had just as much fun as we'd hoped. It's not a complicated game. In fact, it's pretty simple, and there's not a heck of a lot of strategy, but it is a lot of fun. Fun enough that despite the fact it oddly says that it's ages 15 and up, my kids were playing. And remember, they're 9 and 10, and they had no problem. In fact, they even won a couple rounds of the game. Although, in the end, the one who won the whole thing was my mother, as it should be. But what I kind of took away from this was something a little unexpected. When Russ and I first looked at this game, it was pretty simple. In fact, he had sent a picture of it to me just to say, hey, look, there's a card game based on Castle, because I like the show. And my first thought was, well, buy it. I want to see it. And he said, well, I'm not sure I want to buy it because it doesn't really look very complicated or very exciting. And it could be kind of lame and it's $30. And I said, oh, what the heck, buy it. It's Castle. It'll be fun. And that's kind of where our mindset, and I think especially his, was when we sat down to play the game on Sunday afternoon. Then we started playing. And it wasn't complex, but it was very fun. And it was cute to see little characters. They have all this graphics from the show. So you look at, the people that you recognize in those characters, and that's fun. But I think what we really didn't account for is that my mom is not a hardcore gamer. She played card games like nobody's business when she was younger, but she does not play games. She is not a gamer. So for her, this was the perfect game. It wasn't too complicated. It wasn't something that we knew way more about, so she felt intimidated. It was easy to play. It was fun to play. It involved characters that she was familiar with and she liked from the TV show, and it involved a theme. My mom loves murder mysteries, so just that whole idea was great for her. And what it showed me was not so much like, okay, this is the kind of game that I've got to play if I play with my mom, but the importance of really, really knowing your audience when you break out a game to play with them, especially if they're not a gamer, and just sort of leaving your own preconceived ideas at the door. For us, if we broke this out on game night with our friends who game all the time, or if Russ brought it up to Myriad on Tuesday, I'm pretty sure all the guys would say, yeah, that wasn't really that cool. That wasn't really that fun. It's kind of lame. There's no strategy. There's nothing you have to think about, blah, blah, blah. But to my mom, the next day, my mom actually said, thank you so much for a wonderful Mother's Day. And thank you so much for inviting me over to play that game. I liked that. Can we play that again? Not at all what I think you would hear most of the hardcore gamers in the world say, but definitely what you would hear my mom say, because she's not a gamer. So just a little lesson to keep in mind that sometimes a game that seems simple and maybe not challenging enough for you, to the right audience is the perfect game and will be a heck of a lot of fun.
So our friends at Cool Mini or Not, Craig, just sent me a brand new box.
Did they?
Yes, and it's not a review copy. No, this is because
Roning going on inside that.
Yeah, see, I got into Kickstarter back before they were a sponsor, back before anything. Back a year ago, this Adepticon, actually, when I first demoed a zombie side, I backed it on my iPhone right there at Adepticon 2012. Yeah. And at that time when you backed it, they got all these extra stretch goals that you wouldn't get till the second wave. And I just got the second wave. It's called Survivors Set 1. It came, first of all, with my Zombie Side t-shirt. That's finally here now. Now, I got the game way back last summer, but now I got the Zombie Side t-shirt. It's bright red. It's got the big zombie sign logo with the zombie face on it, and then the Molotov cocktail, which is just awesome.
Uh-huh.
But now I got the new Zombie Side Survivor Set. It's awesome. It's got, basically, he's not called, his actual name is Eagles Chaz, the American hero, but it's clearly Chuck Norris, the zombie fighter, which is just awesome. Also, you've got another guy here called the Cardboard Tube Samurai, which is clearly the Cardboard Tube Samurai from Penny Arcade as well. And then also what's cool is you got zombie versions of all these guys now. And coming in here are the cards to play both the regular Survivor and also the zombie version of these guys now. So they're also still survivors. They're still good guys, but now they've got like evil zombie powers because they're still clinging to the humanity and trying to fight the good fight, even as the zombie grips them and takes them down to the evil level. It just looks really cool. The bits are awesome. The cards are great. The little fluff on the back is just fun to read. Just a great value. And that's the cool thing about Cool Mini or Not. Here's what I'm going to tell you now. If you see a Cool Mini or Not Kickstarter, what you need to do is just tell yourself that is going to be an insane value Okay, it just is going to be an insane value. And what you need to do is say, if that's something I'm even remotely interested in, just do it because you will not be sorry what you get in the box. You just won't be. Just simply won't be.
No.
And now their games are fantastic too. Like, look for some of the games: Sedition Wars, Zombicide, Rivet Wars coming out this fall. Just all the great stuff. Check out CoolMiniOnaut.com. They have just such a great stable of fantastic hybrid games between miniature games and board games. They're just so much fun to play.
Absolutely.
CoolMiniOrNot.com.
Yay!
This is the Dice Tower Network at Dicetowernetwork.com.
What are you doing, soldier? When a game like that walks by, you salute.
That's right. You game salute. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Game salute. Soon to be everywhere.
Indeed. You know, our friend Dan and all the hardworking folks at Game Salute, they work really hard to publish and bring out new games from a wide variety of folks out there, little studios, little people who just got great ideas, need to get them out there. Game Salute's got all the experience. And, you know, Craig, I got a chance to play some of the new hotness coming from Game Salute.
What is new hotness, Russ?
Well, first of all, it's Princes of the Dragon Throne. This Kickstarter is about to start any day now. So keep an eye on Kickstarter for this game. It is a massive game from the folks at Clever Mojo Games, a studio you might know made a little game called Alien Frontiers. Remember that game? Yeah. Well, they are making a brand new game. This one's based in the world of dragons, and you have awesome looking wooden dragon meeples. You have big dragon meeples in the middle and little dragon meeples, and there's all these little meeples also that are carved with swords and shields, and they are all the people, and you basically have to influence and use your dragons and feed them. It's got a deck building mechanic as well, where you're going to actually build your better deck, get better dragons, better influential political figures into your deck, and then use those to take control of various guilds in the land and influence the Dragon Council. Really cool area control, worker placement, really cool looking game. Fantastic opponents. Again, watch Kickstarter for this one. And then, by the way, if you are a Clever Mojo fan, you want to also watch for this 4th edition of Alien Frontiers Kickstarter just launched. Brand new version of Alien Frontiers. All the bling that came in the expansions now right in the box. Double-sided board to handle the new rocket dice. See, I'm a component guy. I love my components, right? Well, in Alien Frontiers, you roll 6-sided dice, and you put the dice on the board, and those represent rocket ships. But part of the problem I have with the game is, well, there's 6-sided dice that don't look like rocket ships. Well, now there's rocket dice, which actually look like rockets. You roll them, they look like rockets, you put them on the board, it's just awesome. So check out Alien Frontiers, it's awesome, fantastic. And these are all products that are powered by Game Salute. These are the things that are happening now because Game Salute's putting in their expertise and making sure they get the market and get there at a fair price with great components for you guys out there. So check out GameSalute.com for all the latest on all the great games.
You're listening to the D6 generation. More today.
Hey, welcome back. And I know you've been waiting for what the heck was all that Egypt stuff at the beginning of the show.
Yes.
Well, all that Egypt stuff at the beginning of the show was us reviewing this ridiculously cool game that came out of the blue, out of left field, and landed right on Russ's head, Kemet.
It did land on my head. Now, first, sorry we had to say goodbye to Colby a little earlier. He had to leave. Something about running his own game company, or I don't know, new game, zombies. I don't understand.
Twisted sense of priority.
Yeah, gotta go wash my hat. The plaid's starting to bleed. I don't know what's going on.
Oh,
anyway,
that actually got mean, Russ.
I'm sorry. No, we love Colby. We love him.
It was awesome. and here he was giving us his time. And
no, we really appreciate it. Thank you, Colby, for coming on the show. Really appreciate it. Go to plaidhatgames.com. Check out all their awesome stuff. But
thanks again for helping us with the Adepticon board game night.
Yeah, exactly right. So now I got to talk about Kemet. So here I am, innocently walking into Myriad Games, just going into the store, strolling around, doing my thing, and there on the shelf is a game themed after Egypt, which already is trouble because I love Egypt, right? It's just a cool setting.
We know that. All the way to Arcane Legions, we know that you like Egypt.
And as I turn the box around, Craig, the components are stunning. And what's worse, the one that got me, I'm looking at the components carefully, and some of them are pre-inked, and they're like sculptures. There's an elephant with a howdah, a war elephant, Craig.
Yeah.
With a howdah.
It's about Russ.
I had to buy it. I went.
understandable. It's understandable.
And
this was also you trying to avoid buying Dreadball, but that's neither here nor there.
Well, it was a little bit, but anyway, so it was what was it, $65, which more about the price later, but I think it's kind of a steal when you look at the bits in the box, especially compared to the $85 Dreadball. I'm not going to lie. We'll see. Anyway, so $65. It was published in 2012, but I had not seen this anywhere in the United States, at least in my area, until this past month. So for me, this feels like a 2013 game, but maybe it came out in Europe or somewhere else earlier. Published by Asmodee, and Madagot is the parent company, but Asmodee's publishing it. And I heard this. Now, Dan Yarrington, who apparently knows stuff about the game industry, told me that
he knows one or two things.
Because I couldn't figure out, like, how for $65 do they get so much stuff you're going to hear about in this box? So many awesome components. Like, everything is plastic sculpts in here. I mean, everything. Movement, action tokens, point trackers, everything's plastic in this game. All these great sculpts. I mean, each player's armies are different sculpts. It's just that detailed for no reason, just because they did it. And he said, well, I guess Asmodee is huge. I didn't know this about Asmodee, but they're like as big as Wizards, like this massive company. So that scale, they can just do that kind of stuff. I didn't know that. Mm-hmm. And it's a 2 to 5 player game, and it's supposed to run in about 90 minutes. That we felt played that right, Craig?
Yeah.
90 minutes? Yeah, I think so. So, Craig, they got a little blurb here on the back of the box for the theme. Can you do a dramatic reading of the theme statement here?
Best.
All right.
In the mythic age of ancient Egypt, the powerful gods throw their troops into epic battles to demonstrate their power. The powerful gods demonstrate their power. Anyway, in the desert or at the feet of gigantic temples, they use their many powers to support their troops, summon and control mythological creatures, and gain the upper hand.
Excellent, and thus more power, right?
Show up there a fourth time.
Yes, nice. They should have got power in there. So basically you are taking on the role of a powerful ancient god. And clearly with powers. And you are, there are a lot, actually, now that you say that, the powers 3 times in there are a lot of powers in this game. Yeah.
You're not the god, though. You're a tribe.
Yeah, I guess you're a tribe. Yeah, okay.
Because you choose to worship sort of different gods.
Yes, you are the worshippers of a god. That makes more sense, actually, in the theme. So anyway, basically you're battling for control of the land, and it turns out to be victory points. All right. So let's talk about what comes in this box. Because I think really the components, if you're a bit lover like me, you love components, this game's just going to jump out at you and grab you by the throat and say, buy me.
Right.
So here we go.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff.
So you open this box, and first of all, there's the double-sided game board. Craig, what did you think about the art and the layout of the game board?
I thought it was very cool. Very solid construction and very neat graphic design, because it divides the land into different areas, but at the same time, it's done in a way that's unobtrusive to the overall aesthetic impact of the board. It was really cool.
And it's double-sided with rivers in the middle, and that all handles player count. So one side of the board is for... What?
It's very small world-ish.
It is. Yeah, there's a lot of small world going on here in a very subtle way, I think. But anyway, so there's player count sides, and then also you play on half the board. If there's like on the 2 to 3 player side, you can either use one half of the river or the whole side, and then the other side is the 4 to 5 player side, same trick. Plays pretty well with 2 players, too. I played it with Angelo with 2 players, and it played fine. It's obviously more fun with more players because there's more backstabbing and stuff, but 2 work just as well. You get 48 power tiles, and these are like nice, thick, they look linen, right? Cards. Well, not really cards, they're more like square tiles, and there's 16 of each in red, white, and blue, and more about those in a little bit, but they're a huge part of the game. And then, Craig, this is the coolest part. You get the 7 creatures, right? And they're like these really awesome. What do you think they're made out of? Like resin or something? I couldn't really tell.
No, I think they're just a good hard plastic, but because they're marbled.
Oh yeah, right.
They're either dipped or washed, or they're just a marbled, really hard, solid, high quality plastic. They were awesome. Clearly the coolest pieces in the whole game.
Yeah, and they look at they're inked in brown. They're really, really high-quality sculpts. You got like a sphinx, a phoenix, a mummy priest, a giant scorpion, a giant scarab with a little dude riding on it, a desert snake with a little dude riding on it, and, of course, the ancestral elephant. Now, these guys are all monocolor because basically they're mighty creatures that you can summon to aid your forces, and they travel with your forces on the battlefield. So different players might have these at different times in the game, or different games you play. There are 35 of these divine intervention cards. More about those later. There's plenty of battle cards. There's plenty of card stuff. And again, all the tokens, even the cardboard tokens in this game, I think are really, really high quality. Great victory point tokens. And this is interesting, too. There are different ways to get victory points in this game. And instead of just coming up with a pile of all the victory point tokens looking the same, there are actually different art on each victory point token indicating the way you score that victory point. So a combat victory point token is red with little battle markings on it, which has got a 1 on our victory points. But then a victory point you receive for example, buying a special power is a different color. It's blue. And so it's kind of cool that you can see all these colors and see how players are getting their victory points, which is sort of interesting. You get a bunch of action tokens, which are all these. Again, they're really cool plastic look like little coins, but they're little, almost like little hockey puck things. And then each player, there's 5 sets of these bits for each player. So each player is going to get 12 unit guys, which are basically your warriors. And again, they're the 12 guys are the same sculpt for each player, but they're different color for each player, and they're different sculpt for each player, and they look different also. So like the guys that worship Anubis or whatever have all like little Anubis hound-looking warriors, right? And there's like a bird faction, and they all have falcon heads and all that kind of stuff, right, Craig?
Yeah. These are more standard board game quality plastic, so they're kind of bendy and stuff, but they are awesome. The detail is awesome. And the fact that every player has totally different models is just kicking it up a notch compared to most board games at this level, where everybody, your little pawns are all the same little guy, which is cool, but different colors. These guys are each player has a totally different sculpt, which is awesome.
And there's no reason it had to be. They just did it to be cool, which is fun. You get your 5 action tokens, which again could have been cardboard, but they're not. They're plastic bits, little plastic things with little like scarabs on the top or something. You also get a plastic prayer point marker, because each player is going to get a map that goes in front of them with some cool artwork on them for their deity they're worshiping. And then along the top of your mat is this little track which indicates your prayer points, and your prayer points are your primary resource in your game. It's like your money. Because the game's all about praying to your God and getting divine power. And then there's this cool prayer point marker that just goes along the track, and it's a nice bit of plastic. You're going to get that player board I talked about. Also, you get 3 pyramids. And Craig, how cool are the pyramids?
The pyramid, the 3 pyramid.
Each player, per guy.
Oh, you mean the D4s?
Yes, the giant D4s.
They're giant D4s that are awesome. If you were being attacked by like cavalry, you could use these as caltrops.
They're huge. They're like an inch or 2 tall, and each player gets a red one, a white one, and a blue one. And what's cool is they're actually, because Craig and I joked about this, right? Who hasn't looked at a D4 and said, I've got a little pyramid in my hand? Well, someone did and decided, I'm going to make a game where it's a pyramid. So you put these things in your city on the board, and they're your 3 different pyramids that appeal to different aspects of powers you can get from your gods. And then the number that is indicated on the D4 indicates the amount of effort you put into making your pyramid awesome. So if you have a level 3 pyramid, a level 2 pyramid, a level 4 pyramid, a level 1 pyramid, higher level is better. More about that in a little bit. And each player is also going to get 6 battle cards, which are, more about those a little later too. And then included is a rule book and another booklet with a power reference on it. So the game is driven by an awful lot of icons, which aren't too hard to learn, but there's this nice little booklet that explains the powers for each thing that has icons on it.
You're going to be that little booklet is going to see a lot of use.
It is. And the rule book itself is pretty good. My only complaint about it is I don't like when companies do this. They wanted to be able to sell it in a lot of different countries. So it's actually like an 8-page rule book, but they've put 6 different language versions together in one binding. So it's actually like a 50-page rule book with 8 pages for each country. So whenever you go to open the book, you got to remember, where's the English section again, and flip back and forth. And the same is true with the booklet for power reference, which is really probably a 2 or 3 page thing, but now it's like 20 pages because it's all different languages in there. I'd rather see them, it's probably more expensive, either include multiple different booklets broken out by country so I can throw away the ones I'm not going to use, or some I'll break them up because it's just a little bit, I just find that annoying. I don't know.
Yeah.
But that's what's in the box. So, Craig, what do you think for $65? Is that a good deal?
Yeah, I think it's a very good deal. I mean, you're getting so much cardboard, and really nice solid cardboard, but the plastic as well, and the dice are huge. They're not any remotely normal size D4s. And then you add the gameplay to that, and it's great. I think it is, if not spot on, it is actually a really good deal.
It's actually underpriced, if anything. It's certainly not. I don't think it's overpriced. It's a good deal.
I mean, and a lot of board games do that, and there's a lot of intellectual property that goes and a lot of work that goes into these games, and so you buy them and you have fun, but you're kind of feeling like, oh, gee, I don't know if I'm getting, my money's worth. I don't know. I don't think, if you're reasonable, which God knows, there are a lot of unreasonable people in the world, but I don't think a reasonable person acting reasonably would buy this and then go, I don't think I got my money's worth, unless you buy it and for whatever reason you don't like the gameplay.
Yeah. Well, one thing we didn't talk about, which is also huge in this game, is the artwork. I mean, each of these power cards has different art on it. Each of the cards, your combat cards, everything's got different art on it. And the art is fantastic. I really like how it looks. The game just looks really, really nice on the table.
Right. It absolutely does.
All right, so let's talk about setups. How do we get this thing on the table? So the first thing you're going to do is pick the side of the board you're going to play on based on your player count. That's easy. Flop the thing down. Now you're going to have to lay out the power tiles. So because the power tiles are basically going to form a bank. And you're going to want to divide them up by color because the power tiles come into 3 colors: red, white, and blue. It's not an American thing. It just matches the dice. So there's red, white, and blue dice, red, white, and blue powers. Divide them up, put them all face up so you can see all the different powers that are available. And you also probably want to separate them by level. The powers come in levels from 1 to 4. Separate them that way too, because people are going to go shopping. They're going to be able to afford like a level 1 power, level 2 power. So by dividing them up that way, it'll make it easier also. After you get power tiles done, which doesn't take too long, especially if you store them in Plano like I do, you're also going to have to sort your VP tokens. Now, you want to sort your VP tokens out. Remember I mentioned that there's different colors for different things you can do. For example, temples all give VP points. Now, another interesting thing about the game is there are 2 shapes of victory point tokens. There are square ones and there are round ones. Now, this is an interesting graphic design choice. Square victory point tokens are what they call permanent victory point tokens. And that means that once you've earned one of these, there is no way to lose it. Okay, it's yours for the rest of the game. Round victory point tokens are what they call temporary victory point tokens, and those are points that you can get, but you can also lose them. For example, if you hold a temple, which is a piece of terrain on the table, you may then get a single round temple victory point token. And as long as you hold that temple, you have that token. But if I were to lose that temple to Craig, I'd have to give him my round token, and he'd now have it.
Yep.
So when you're setting the game up, it's a good idea to put those round tokens in each temple to kind of remind you one way I can get a victory point is by holding that temple. Also, there are permanent victory point tokens you can get for holding 2 temples at the end of a turn. Those are square. So you're going to put those in the temples as well to remind players, oh, look, there's also a way I can get permanent victory points. And then also, there's a special place called the Sanctuary where you can actually sacrifice your men to the gods and get a permanent victory point if you sacrifice 2 of them. So put those victory point shapes over there, too, to remind players that's another place you can go. Because the goal of this game is to get as many victory points as you can, and depending on if you're playing a short game, it's 8 victory points is your goal. And if it's a long game, you're playing till 10. And as soon as someone gets to 8 or 10, then that's going to be the last turn of the game, and whatever's at the end is going to be the winner. So the thing you remember about this game, though, is there are many different ways to get victory points. So the more visual cues you have to remind players of the different options they have to get victory points, the easier it is for especially new players to pick that kind of stuff up. So I like how they have the different shapes and you put them in different spots of the board.
Right. I mean, that's a little bit more to learn, but once you pick up on the pattern, it makes the game much easier to figure out what's going on.
Now, so once you get the main board set up, the last thing to do is give each player their stuff. And again, if you've got it all bagged by color, you're in pretty good shape. But each player is going to get a mat, and the mats are themed based on different gods. And we've tried to make the mats match a particular color, but it's sort of just kind of pick what you like. So you get your mat, you're going to pick a color also like blue, and you get all the plastic for the blue color. Now, in the boards, there are cities, and there's big, large 3-sectioned areas. So each city has 3 sections in it, and in each section, there's a little square spot for pyramids to go. So each player is going to start with a city, and you're going to want to sit.
Angular.
So, figure it out so you're sitting near the city on the board you're going to start with.
Right.
You're all going to get 5 plastic round action tokens, so put those next to each player, and you're going to get a plastic square token that goes on your mat for the prayer point tracking, and that starts in the 5. So you start with 5 prayer points. You put that down. Each player is going to get 12 plastic units, which I call dudes, your little army guys. You're going to get 12 of those matching your color, and they're individual sculpts, like we said. You're going to get 10 of those. You're going to put them right on the board. You're going to be able to put them in your 3 different city spots. You can divide them however you like. There is a rule, though. Stacking limit is 5. No more than 5 of your guys, your dudes, in one space. So when you're putting them in your city, you got to break them up by 3, 4, and 2, or whatever you're going to do. And then everybody gets their battle cards. You're going to get a little deck of 6 battle cards, and they're for your faction. They're color-coded, but they're actually all the same stats. So everybody's got a card that matches everybody else's ability. So it's kind of like if you ever played Game of Thrones, you got those combat cards you put down the board game. This is a similar mechanic to that. So he was going to get this deck of combat cards. We'll talk about combat in a little bit. Everybody gets their 3 pyramids. Everybody's going to get three giant D4s, a blue, a white, and a red. And you're going to put them in your city. Now, you can choose to do this a couple different ways. You can put them all up on level 1. So you can start the game with a blue level 1 pyramid, a red level 1 pyramid, and a white level 1 pyramid. Or you can start the game with one of your pyramids at level 2, another pyramid at level 1, and a third pyramid at level 0, which means it's not on the board yet. Okay, so if you want to have sort of a boost, and the colors of the pyramids matter because the more powerful your pyramid, the better powers, those power cards you can buy matching that color. So there's 3 different colors of power cards I mentioned earlier, and we'll get to that more a little later. But basically, by increasing your pyramids, worshiping a particular god's abilities, you're going to get more and more of a particular type of power and be able to buy better powers. Right. And lastly, each player is going to be dealt 1 DI, or Divine Influence cards. And these are sort of the random action cards you can play throughout the game that just do things people don't expect. So you get one of those to start the game also. And last but not least, you're going to randomly determine player order. Now, on the side of the board, on the top of the board, there's a little track with 1 spot for each player in the game. And again, these are plastic bits. Everybody's got one of their color. You're going to shuffle these up and then put them randomly in an order. That's going to determine the player's order. Later in the game, that order will be redetermined each turn based on some rules. But for now, we're just going to put them randomly on there for player order. All right? Yep. Does that make sense, Craig?
Yep. Oh, absolutely.
It's pretty quick once you get the hang of it. Just give the players their stuff and lay it out, right?
It's not going to be one of those games that you can play out of the box. It's going to take a little setup, but it's really important. And once you get the hang of it, it really makes the game run much more smoothly.
Exactly. So here's how we play. Remember, what I always do first, tell the players what they're trying to do. Now, in this case, it's a little tricky because it's probably the hardest part of the game to teach, which is how do you win? Because it's really just gather victory points. The problem is there's several different ways to gather victory points, and it'll take your players the first time through a little bit of playing before they really get a handle on what my different options are and the primary ways to get victory points. What I tell people, though, when they're playing is the easiest way to get a victory point is if you are the attacker in a battle and you win, you get a victory point that is permanent. You cannot lose again. Okay, so that's a good victory point. The other big thing is holding temples are worth a victory point, temporary, but holding 2 temples at the end of the turn is a permanent victory point. It's another great way to get victory points. There are other ways, too. We'll get to those in a little bit, but that's basically what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
All right, now, the main turn of the game is divided into 2 sections. The night phase, which is really just a prep phase, and then the day phase, which is where all the players take their actions. All right?
Which is a cool, themey way to split it up.
It is. And what's cool, too, is some of those cards and other things that happen have little icons on them that either look like a sunny day or a starry night, and that tells you which phase of the game you can play these cards in or powers work in, which is kind of a nice way to keep it broken up, too. So the night phase is very simple. Everybody's going to get 2 prayer points, and prayer points in this game are basically money. And remember, you got that track on the top of your mat. You got a plastic token on there telling you what and the track goes, I think, from 0 to 11, and you can caps at 11. So you can't have more than 11 prayer points. You start the game at 5, so in the first night phase, goes up 2 points, boop, you're at 7. Okay, you slide the tracker up. Everybody also gets another Divine Influence card, so each turn you're going to get 1 more, so you deal those out to each player. Then any night powers would go off. So some powers you get later in the game say at night do this. Well, that's what you do those now. And then lastly, we're going to determine turn order. Now in turn 1, it's of course random, but in later turns in the game, the person with the lowest victory points currently picks the entire turn order for the whole table. So it's not like it goes from lowest victory points to highest points. He just picks it. He looks them all, and this is where little politics come in because they're going to try to, well, I won't attack you this turn if maybe you put me a little higher on the track, that kind of thing. Which I kind of like its balancing. Now, what I haven't figured, I played the game like 4 or 5 times now, and I'm still not 100% sure if it's better to go first or last.
That depends.
I know, it really does. And I discovered the last game I played where everybody knew what they were doing, the last turn going last is huge.
Oh, I think that's true of a lot of these games where the turn order shifts over the course of the game.
Yeah.
Once you get because that once you get a handle on the game, it's going to give you that opportunity at the very end to kind of jump forward, like we talked about in achievements that Chris did with Spartacus, and that's how I won when we played our first game.
Right.
Was I went last? Actually, I went second to last, but the person who went last didn't have any way to stop me once I'd used up all of my stuff to grab the victory points and then consolidate.
And I think the designers of the game know this because so what happens is the guy in last place, the lowest victory point guy is going to pick the order, and he can pick whatever he wants. But then also if it's a tie, so let's say Craig and I both have 5 victory points, everybody else is ahead of us. If it's a tie, then the people from the last turn who was the earliest player gets to pick the new order. I think we're doing this wrong, Craig. So basically, the earlier you went, you get to pick the new order, which implies to me the game designers think that going later is generally a benefit. So it's sort of interesting. That's the rule there. But it's really interesting that one player gets to decide each turn the entire turn order, which is really neat. All right, so that's the night phase. Boom, pretty simple. Get 2 prayer points. Everybody gets a DI card. Any powers that go off, and check your turn order. The guy who's in last place picks a new turn order. All right, now it's time for the day phase. We actually do some stuff. So in the day phase, in player order, on the turn track, each player is going to do one action, and the next player is going to take an action, and we're going to go around the table in that order of the turn track until all players have used all their little action tokens. Okay? So each player's got 5 in the beginning of the game. There are powers that give you bonus ones, but each player's got 5 to start with. So when you do your action, you're going to take one of your move tokens and your action tokens, and you're going to put it in one of these spaces on your mat. So your mat has got this little temple shape, a pyramid shape on the right-hand side, and inside of it are a bunch of little action spaces with icons in them for a type of action. And you can put one of your tokens into one of these actions to indicate, I'm going to do a move action, or I'm going to do a prayer action. You put your token in there. Now, the thing to remember is each space can only contain one action token, and not until the entire turn is over do you get to take your action tokens back. So where you put your action tokens is going to limit the number of times you can do certain things in a particular turn. All right.
Until you start getting the powers that let you break that.
Right. So, and then when you put your token in, you're going to immediately do your action. Okay, so you're going to say, I'm going to do a prayer action, you immediately do it. So let's talk about the action types. Yeah. So it's my turn, I'm going to do an action type. One of the actions I can choose from is prayer. Okay? There are 2 different prayer spots, so I can pray twice in a turn after 2 different actions. When I pray, it's really simple. I gain 2 prayer points. So I move my little thing up. Now, the problem with doing a prayer is I'm burning one of my actions on prayer when it could be an action somewhere else, but I'm increasing my money.
Yep.
Very handy. The next thing I can do is raise a pyramid. There's only one spot to raise a pyramid, so you can only ever raise a pyramid once during your turn, during a given day phase. Now, when raising a pyramid basically means you're going to increase one of your colored pyramids some number of levels. Now, the cost to raise that pyramid up is equal to the prayer points, equal to the next level you're going to raise it to. So if you're going to take a pyramid from level 1 to level 2, it's going to cost you 2 prayer points. So you move your prayer pack down 2 points, you flip your D4 there of the color you want up to level 2. Now, you can, in one action, raise the same pyramid more than one level, but you got to pay for each level. So if I'm at level 1 and I want to get to level 3, it's going to cost me 2 prayer points to go to level 2, and then 3 more prayer points to go to level 3. So it's 5 prayer points to go from level 1 to level 3. Make sense?
Yep.
That's pretty much easy. Now, Craig, what's the point of raising your pyramids up?
Well, the pyramids are going to give you a couple different abilities. They're going to, first you can teleport. This is an important thing. You can teleport from a pyramid, and that's it. Unless you get special abilities, once you've teleported out into towards an obelisk, then you're not like bouncing back and forth.
Right.
But that's huge because it's hard to move around these boards. Right. It's hard to get where you need to get. But as long as you've got your forces in your city and you have one or more pyramid, that's huge. And all of a sudden, then you can be wherever you need to be.
And remember, if you have a level 0 pyramid, you have no pyramid on the board, so that spot cannot be teleported out of. So
exactly.
if you decided to start with a 2, 1, 0, you're going to want to get that other pyramid into play pretty soon.
And your pyramid is what's going to dictate what you can buy for powers and what level. So you need to have that color pyramid, and you need ownership of that color pyramid, and it counts if you take somebody else's.
Yes, it does.
If Russ has raised his white pyramid to 4, and I rush in and take his undefended city, and now I've got the city sector with that pyramid, all of a sudden I can take any actions that require a white level 4 pyramid. So that's huge because that's what dictates the level of powers that you can buy and the colors. And then if you have a level 4, is it you get 1 temporary victory point for every level 4, or if you have one or more?
Every level 4 pyramid you control is 1 temporary victory point.
That's another way to get victory points.
So it's not just yours. So it's cool as you build your pyramid to level 4, you can buy the best powers in the game. You also are gaining 1 temporary. It's temporary because someone else could steal the pyramid from you. You get 1. If Craig invaded my white level 4 pyramid, I've lost a temporary victory point. Now Craig's sitting on it. Yeah. Right, so it becomes your city becomes a tempting target as you raise these temples up. But having them at level 4 is huge because you can buy these awesome powers. So it's an interesting mechanic.
Yeah,
and it's just fun to flip those D4s over. So that's why you want to build a pyramid. Very important.
Right.
Okay, so the next action space you could pick to do is buy a power tile. And there's one of these per color. So there's a spot for buying a power tile for red, for blue, or for white. So you could technically buy 3 different colored tiles a turn with 3 different actions if you wanted to. Okay, and to buy a tile, as Craig just mentioned, it's based on the prerequisites are you must have a pyramid of a matching color and equal to or higher than the level of the power you want to buy. So the powers come in 3 levels, 1 through 4. And if you want to buy a level 3 power, you got to have a level 3 pyramid in that color. Okay, so if you meet that prerequisite, you can then buy the power for the number of prayer points equal to its level. So if you're buying a level 3 power, you got to pay 3 prayer points to buy that power. Okay, one rule, you can never own 2 identical tiles. So there are some tiles that offer the same abilities with the same picture on them, and you cannot buy 2 of the same tile. That's just the rule. And just to give a general overview, sort of give you a feel for it, the white, each of the 3 colors has a basic theme. Now, some of the powers kind of stray from the theme, but basically the white power track, or technology tree, you can think of it that way too. The white power track is basically a stronger economy. It gives you better and more efficient ways to get prayer points, which is all about things. So like every time you take a prayer action, instead of taking 2 prayer points, for example, you get 3, or everything costs, all powers you buy cost 1 less prayer point. That kind of stuff is the white, right? So, also though, all the colors have some of the creatures you can get. So remember we talked about that awesome elephant or the giant mummy, all that stuff. Those creatures are bought as powers, and when you buy that power, there's only one mummy out there. So when I buy that power, then now my army have access to the mummy. I take the mummy and I'm going to put them with some troops. More about those guys in a little bit, but that's one of the ways you get creatures.
Right.
The blue powers are mostly defensive, right, Craig?
They are awesome.
Did you play some of those? What were some examples of those?
I did. Well, the serpent, I believe, is a blue.
Yep.
And he's fast, and I think it's the serpent that negates everybody else's creature powers.
I think that's right. Yep.
And which is an awesome defensive power, because all of these creatures have these awesome powers that make them desirable. Mm-hmm. If you have that snake with a decent-sized army in a section, nobody's going to want to throw in their monster, because all of a sudden their monster's abilities aren't going to work.
Right.
So there's lots of cool ways for you to manipulate the board, but also to defend yourself against different things that are happening. There's a tactics card that's in there in the defensive, in the blue powers, that allows you to turtle your guys up and do a testudo formation. I mean, there's all kinds of cool little fluffy things that add to the game and make it more deep. Give it depth.
Another cool thing about the blue one is, I mentioned earlier, the only way to get victory points in combat are when you're the attacker and you win. Normally, when you're the defender and you win, you've repelled the attacker, but you don't get a victory point for that. However, there is actually a blue power that gives you victory points when you win on defense. So blue is definitely the I'm going to turtle up and try to hold my land power set. The last power set is the red, and it's totally offensive, and it's all about doing more damage and stuff like that. For example, when you attack, you get +1. One of the powers is +1 damage. There's some awesome creatures in there that are really, really high. I think the Phoenix is red, right? And the Phoenix lets you ignore walls and move really quickly. And so it's a very aggressive, very offensive one. And what we found so far in our playing is that we've tried, or at least I don't know if, Craig, if you've noticed this much, but I've tried sort of mainlining. It's very tempting to just crank one of your pyramids to level 4 and stick with one color. But I found people that balance it more do a little better. Having a little bit of blue and a little bit of red and a little bit of white gives them a much more balanced force. I
cranked one of mine up, and then I realized I was buying all lower level powers.
Right.
I mean, like, I think the upper level powers are really cool and sexy, but you get more utility, in my experience, from some of the lower level stuff.
And then what gets into trouble too is the higher level powers are fewer in number, and they're very desirable. And if 2 players are racing together, both going blue, for example, and they both want that elephant for whatever because it looks cool, someone will grab it before you, and now you've built a level 4 blue pyramid. He got the big one first. If you go for a lower level, broader balance, you're going to not be fighting as much over the cheaper stuff because there's more copies of the cheaper tokens. So, you know, it's different strategies, and it depends on what your opponents are doing and kind of knowing your opponents. A lot of interaction going on. So that's buy a power tile action. The next action you can do, really simple, recruit. There's only 1 recruit space per turn, but that's build more dudes. Okay? How this works is you're going to pay 1 prayer point per dude you want to build, little plastic guy, And you can build as many as you can afford or want to spend. So you shoot down 1 prayer point per guy. And as long as you have the plastic, there's only 12 per faction. So you're not going to ever have lots and lots of guys out. This is not a game of like, okay, my 20 dudes attack your 80 guys, and then my second army of 30 guys comes in. No, this is just, you got 12 guys. But another little small reference here. They come and go quick. Don't expect them to stay on the table long. Land ebbs and flows here. It's kind of like Smallwood. You're in there, you get some area control. You're going to maximize your victory points for that area control. You're going to lose it to someone else. That's okay. You're going to come back, hit them again. So it's that kind of a feeling. Very dynamic area control game. So recruit. Very simple. You're going to do the recruit action, pay a number of points for the plastic you want of guys. You can only put guys into cities, into your home city. So if I'm in Craig's city and I have captured it, I cannot recruit into Craig's city. Okay, I can only recruit into my home city, but I can recruit into battle. So if Craig has captured my level 4 white pyramid, good for him. But now in my turn, I can just recruit and basically spawn guys right into that spot where he's got guys because it's my city, and now we're going to have immediate battle. So it's very hard to hold an enemy city if he's got enough dead plastic to bring it back in instantly, assuming you get the prayer points, which is not cheap. So that's recruiting. And the last action is move/attack. Okay, and there actually are 2 slots for moving. The icon's a little foot. So you're going to be able to do 2 move attack actions a turn. And this is a spot where you really want to do this. And if you're keeping track at home, there are many more spaces than you have 5 action tokens. So you're going to decide, if you're going to prayer a lot for energy, for money, you're not going to have as much action tokens left to also raise a pyramid, also buy a power, also recruit, and also move twice. So you got to kind of balance what you're going to do. Movement's pretty simple. So couple quick definitions that are very clear in the book, and I like what they did with this. A troop is all the units in a single space. So if you got 3 plastic dudes in one space, that is a troop. Okay, and when you move, you're going to move a troop, group of units. You move them, and in the core rules of the game, when you start, you're going to move them 1 space. That's all you can do. Okay, and remember the stacking limit is 5. But there are lots of powers you're going to get that are going to increase that movement rate. Certain creatures, when you attach them to your army, like the Phoenix, or will increase the speed, but also powers in general will be like your troops all move 1 faster. If you have a speed higher than 1, then when I do my 1 move action, I can move that 1 troop multiple spaces depending on my speed. And when I do, I can pick up or drop off guys as I go along. All right. If I end up entering a space where there's bad guys or the players, we'll have a fight. Okay. There are some movement actions that are free. First of all, the harbor crossings, you'll notice there's rivers on the board, and rivers are impassable unless there's a big blue arrow showing you can go across it. Crossing a river is free. I don't think, Craig, we did that before. So when you cross the river, it's totally free, so that doesn't count as your movement point. So you can cross the river for free and then move 1, for example. And another rule is the city wall. So every player's cities are surrounded by walls, and you cannot move through a city wall unless you began your turn adjacent to that city wall. So that has the effect of being that if I've got a really fast unit because I've got all kinds of powers, I can't start 3 squares away from Craig and go 1, 2, and then fly right into a city and attack it. I've got to wait a turn outside the city and give him a turn to at least react before I can go into his city. There are, of course, cards that you ignore walls, like the Phoenix, so that rule gets broken, but that's sort of the basic rule. So you can watch for it, make sure nobody can ignore walls on you before you have to worry about that. And Craig already mentioned this. Another key element of the game, a huge part of the game, is teleporting. Yeah. So all the most important places on the board, i.e. all the temples, all the sanctuary, those places I mentioned earlier that crank out victory points, all have obelisks in them. And basically you can teleport from any of your pyramids, or actually any pyramid, even enemy pyramid you control. You can teleport from any pyramid to any obelisk. And as Craig mentioned before, it's a one-way teleport, right, Craig?
Yep.
You go, you don't come back. There is a power that lets you teleport from obelisks, but in the beginning you can't. It's going to cost you 2 prayer points.
Yeah, that there's a power that does just about anything.
There is. So it costs you 2 prayer points. You teleport out there. Bam, you're where you want to go. Now, the thing also remember is teleporting doesn't cost you your movement point. So if you've got 1 movement point, you teleport, costs you 2 prayer points, teleport 5 guys out there, and then it can now make 1 step of movement. So if there's an obelisk near an enemy spot, you can teleport into the obelisk and then walk a step and get into that enemy position and attack them if you want. All right? And basically, when you get into enemy space, you're going to fight. And that is the core mechanics of the game. We'll talk about combat in a second, but basically, you're going to go in, you got the night phase, you gain some prayer points, you determine turn order. The day phase, everybody's going to take 5 actions. So Craig might go, he's going to pick a move action. He moves his guys. Then it's my turn to go. I'm going to pick a raise a pyramid action. And then Rafe might go, and he's going to pick buy a power tile. And that's Craig's turn again. Craig's going to go in. Now he's going to do a second action. He's going to do recruit, right? And we go till all of us have played our 5 plastic tokens. We're done. At the end of the turn, we gather our victory points for anything we did. And if So, for example, after all those 5 tokens are played, if anybody controls 2 temples, that person gets a permanent victory point. You got all the temporary victory points, and if anybody's broken the victory point goal, which is 8 or 10, the game's going to end, and the winner is going to be the guy with the most victory points. And if it's a tie, it's the guy with the most combat victory points. This game very, very much favors the player who is aggressive.
Yeah.
Right? It's all about killing stuff, which reminds me of Small World again, because Small World is really all about attacking. Right?
Yeah.
All right, so let's talk about combat. So, Craig, how does combat work?
Well, it's kind of like Game of Thrones, the game. Except that you're actually churning through. You've got the cards that you described earlier, and the cards have the cards are a little more they pretty much have almost exactly the same. They've got a number value, right?
Yeah, they've got basically what they call a card attack strength,
right? And then they have
blood drops, right?
Blood drops for how many enemy units you will kill, and then they have little defensive icons for how many of yours you can save with that card.
Right.
And you're both going to put the card down, and then you're going to reveal the cards, and it's the number of models or the number of units you have in your troop that's involved in the fight, plus the value of the card, and that's who wins. And if you don't have any other things going on with the cards, then there you go. The guy who lost has to exit that territory and move into an adjacent territory if possible. If not, he dies, right?
Yeah, so a couple of interesting things about that. The winner of the battle chooses where the loser has to go to.
That's right.
And if there's no place to go to, he will die.
Yeah.
But then it's really freaky is the recall rule. Do you remember how that works?
Right. Oh, yes. You can kill your guys for prayer points.
Either the victor or the loser can recall their guys for prayer points. Now, I figured out you have to recall them all or none, so you can't do some of them. You got to put them all back or not. This is cool because everybody you basically recall is worth 1 prayer point. So basically, if I attacked Craig with 5 guys, 2 of them died, and there's 3 guys left, and I won, I could still be like, I need the prayer points. I'm going to take those 3 back, and I get 3 prayer points for taking them off the table. Where this really makes a lot of sense is remember in this game, if you are attacked and you lose, your opponent gets a victory point.
Right.
So if I attack Craig and beat him, but only have 1 guy left, I'm now a sitting duck to give someone else a cheap victory point. So I might want to recall that guy to avoid giving that victory point away.
Yeah.
So again, it's not a game of long-term area control. You're going to lose. This stuff's going to ebb and flow a lot.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that. And there's quite often there's no place, there's not a lot of places on the board that you need to hold.
Right.
Also. So weakening the opponent and then hitting him someplace that you need to hold is a totally viable tactic.
Yeah, it is. And a couple of things. So the strength of the card is all about who wins the combat. So that's that number in the upper left plus all your creature, plus all your plastic, plus any creature bonuses. Some creatures say if I'm with you, like if the Sphinx is with you, you get plus 2 unit strength. Plus any power tile. So there are some tiles you can have that, like it says, like the red power. There's a red tile that says while you're attacking, you're plus 1, attack strength. But after the combat, win or lose, like Game of Thrones, is going to be a casualty check. So you look at all the blood drops, because if there's no blood drops involved in the battle, nobody actually dies. You just got to the winner wins, the loser's got to retreat. But if there's blood drops involved, whoever's got the most blood drops on their cards, the opponent's going to take that many casualties. Unless they have shields, which counteract each blood drop. This is exactly like the Game of Thrones board game where you have the swords and the towers. Exact same thing. And there's also Divine Influence cards you can play at this point, also when you're locking your cards in face down, which augment and add bonuses to the main combat card.
Right.
So there's lots of different places these bonuses come from. Basically, though, you're looking at the combat strength for the win, and then plus or minus any casualties, and you're done.
Yeah. And the cards that there are powers that give you additional cards because everybody's got the same little deck of cards to start with, these combat cards. But then there are powers that give you cards that actually take the place of other cards, which is kind of cool because you have to choose like which one, and none of them are really bad.
No.
So you kind of have to choose, I'm going to get rid of this one to replace with the one that I just bought. And they're very cool. Though there's an attack one that's like no defense, but lots of guys die. And there's a defense one that's like nobody dies, but like a ridiculous number of defense guys. And so that's just another cool little element to the game that's built into the card. So it's not something you have to keep in mind.
Oh, we forgot to mention this too. So like Game of Thrones, when I use a battle card, That card then gets put in my battle card discard pile.
I was in the process of trying to talk about this and got wrapped up in the rest.
And then if you forget, but the thing that's interesting about this game is you actually pick 2 of your battle cards. Unlike Game of Thrones, you pick 2 of them. One goes in my discard pile, and one gets used face down as my actual battle card.
Ooh,
so
quite fast.
Each battle, I go through 2 cards, and remember, there's only 6. So basically, after 3 battles, I'm out of cards, and I reshuffle them and I get my cards back. So the game is designed to get through that deck quickly, but it is kind of cool because if Colby attacks Craig, and Craig uses his, and I know everybody has the same stat cards unless he's got powers. Craig gets hit and uses his best card, his level 5 card. I'm like, okay, now I know his 5's out. So now just like Game of Thrones, I can sneak in and try to hit him while he's weak.
Yep.
But he could be sitting on a Divine Intervention card that throws my plan to a loop. So you never really know, but you can kind of at least have a decent feeling for it. So that's combat. Makes sense. It's pretty simple. It's really simple, actually. It's very Game of Thrones, and I like it. I like it a lot. The only thing I don't like about it is the 2 cards discard one. I keep forgetting to do that. So it's a little fiddly, but it works great, and it keeps it fast. So, Craig, let's talk about creatures a little bit. So there's a couple of bonus things that make this game, that kick it up a notch, and one of them is these awesome-looking creatures that actually are awesome in gameplay. And basically, you get a creature, you attach them to a unit on the battlefield. So the creatures are all this brown color, which is basically a neutral color. And if I get the Sphinx, I get to put them next to one of my troops.
Yep.
Right? And what are some of the examples of the cool creatures, Craig?
Well, there's the snake that negates everybody else's things. Mm-hmm. There's the phoenix that, and they all have their own attack value too. So they do make it. They make you more powerful. Most of them make you more. Yeah,
they might add blood drops. They might add shields. They might add combat strength. They might add movement speed.
Allows you, as you said, to ignore the snake gives you +1 movement, which is awesome, and does the negate thing. Mm-hmm. The phoenix allows you to ignore walls, so you can immediately attack somebody behind walls.
Yep.
What's the scorpion do? I forget.
I forget the scorpion. The elephant gives you bonus defenses. He's a blue one. +1 movement, bonus defenses, and bonus combat strength. So they're all different, and you look at them, and you once you learn the icons of the game, which doesn't take very long, you see, if I get this elephant, I'm going to do that. And so you're going to pick where those units go. And what's neat about these guys is they are attachments to an existing, troop out there, a group of guys, and they don't get attacked or destroyed or anything. If your troops are all killed, the creature just returns immediately to the owner's city, and you put them there with some of your units as long as you can. If for some reason you have nothing in your city, then they go back into your reserve, and then you can bring them back next time you recruit. So they never really die. And once you've got that power, so once I got the power for the elephant, I'm always going to have the elephant in this game, which is kind of cool. Which is neat because there's not really faction-specific powers in this game. You build your own faction-specific powers based on the powers you choose. Right. So one time, the red player or the white player, whatever color player, the green player might be the guy with the elephant, but the next time the green player might be the guy with the phoenix. So that's creatures. They're really nice. They look great, and I think their awesomeness of their bits do match how powerful they are in the game. Did they feel right to you, Craig?
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, they're very cool. You can see why each of those creatures has the powers and abilities that it does. It's not like they don't break the game, or you're like, oh, you have that model, now it's over. But what they do is they solidify a threat. Mm-hmm. And you're like, oh crap, here comes Russ, and he's got the Phoenix. I've got to be aware that wall does nothing for me. It gives the game a constant kind of flowing, changing atmosphere that you have to adapt to and be aware of as you're going forward, because the presence of one of these monsters is going to vastly change the lay of the land in that one part of the board.
Right. Oh, and we should say too, creatures are limited to 1 per space or 1 per troop, so you can't stack 2 creatures together. But it does make a lot of sense. If, for example, you've managed to get both a powerful blue and powerful red pyramid, you could easily have the blue elephant back in your city helping defend it because he's got a good defense value, and then maybe have the Phoenix out there on your offensive unit going to beating the bad guys up. So you can really get some really interesting combos just in different parts of the board going. We talk about Divine Intervention cards a little bit. There are 3 different types. They have icons on them to tell you whether they're used in the night phase, the day phase, or during the combat phase. And you can only play Divine Interventions in combat if they have a combat icon on them. Okay, so that'll help you avoid a lot of confusion because people will be like, I want to play this now. If combat's going on, you can only use the combat Divine Intervention cards.
Right.
And all of them have a cost in the upper left-hand corner, prayer points. So not all of them, some of them do. So you have to pay some prayer points to use them. And can you think of any good examples of some of the DI cards, Craig?
I can't. Sorry.
You can't. Okay, well, there's one.
What are some of those examples, Russ?
Well, I'd be happy to tell you, Craig. One of them, which is a particular gets used a lot, is you get to kill an enemy troop or unit anywhere on the board. So you can just kill a guy for like 2 prayer points. Another one is you can teleport for 1 less. One of them is you can cancel a battle. So if someone's going to attack you, you can pretend the battle never happened. So things like that. They break the game up. Some of them, the combat ones usually add shields or blood or combat value to the battle. So in the prayer, so the fluffy is cool. Like you got extra prayer to your god, no more control from your god, so you can bring that in there, and he brings in divine intervention and saves that day, that battle, that kind of thing. Free recruit, bonus prayer points. You can play them, just get extra prayer points. That kind of stuff just mixes it up. And again, it's nice because I know some people, the Game of Thrones combats in particular, I really like it. Some people don't like the fact that it's so static and there's no randomness at all. The DI cards give you that random element because your opponent may have something you don't expect, even if you know for sure he's already played his level 5 card and his level 4 card, so he's got his level 3 card. You're like, no problem, I got him, but then he might have a DI card that gives him +3 or something that throws your plans out of whack, which is kind of neat. Yeah. So that gives that random element. And we should talk about some of the special spaces on the board. Really, we talked about 2. There's the temples and the sanctuary of all gods. The temples are all about controlling those. Depending on the player count in the game, there's going to be more temples on the board or less. And it's really, the game is really going to center around, I think when you get veteran players, it's going to be centered around temple control. Yeah. 1 temple gives you a temporary victory point. 2 temples gives you a permanent victory point at the end of the turn. Now, if you think about that, if you're owning 2 temples, you're getting 2 temporary victory points plus the permanent one. You've got 3. If you're playing an 8 victory point game, you're already almost halfway there in 1 turn of activity if you don't lose one of those temples next turn. If someone's foolish enough to let you hold those for 2 turns, you just hit 5 victory points, right? So boom, you're 3/4 of the way there. And if you got a pyramid level 4, so temples are really, really powerful. And the game's all about those. The other thing is the Sanctuary of the All Gods is really interesting because this spot is at the end of the turn, the end of the day phase, you can sacrifice 2 of your plastic units that are there and get a permanent victory point. But the interesting thing about the Sanctuary is it's located on a delta with no bridges off of it. Right. And the only way to get there is to teleport in. And once you teleport in,
didn't stop you.
You can't teleport back. So if you get into a fight there, you either win or you die.
Don't stop you from moving, though?
What's that?
Didn't you just say rivers that we were doing it wrong and that
rivers where there's a ford, you don't pay a movement point to cross.
Oh, okay.
You still got it. You can still only cross where there's a ford.
General still block.
Yes. I'm sorry. That's a good catch. If I said that was incorrect, there are spots where there's clear arrows where there are fords on the rivers. Gotcha. But yeah, rivers are impassable unless there's a ford. But a ford is a free movement, doesn't cost a point.
So it is a whole teleportation thing,
right? So it's a teleportation trap up there. So once you go up there, you're committing those troops. You're going to die. So it's kind of neat. It's a very bloody area, but it's huge. Especially if you get and hold it, and everybody's ignoring you, and you get like 4 guys up there. Then in 2 turns, you're going to be getting victory point and victory point. Those are permanent. You can't lose those at all. So it's a very powerful thing. So Craig, what were some any strategic advice before we go into final thoughts here?
Well, I think what you need to do is keep in mind how you're going to get your victory points because there are so many paths to victory in this game, which is one of the elements that I really like in games like this where it's not, whoever makes the engine first is going to win or whatever. I mean, there's so many different ways to get so many different types of victory points that quite often build on each other in different ways every game that you got to keep it in mind. Remember that you get it for the 2 temples. Remember that you get the temporary ones for holding the temples. Remember those places up in the north, battles as attacker, or you can go defensive and get that. Russ did this and got the card to very good effect, the card that gives you the victory points for winning defensive battles, because then you just kind of camp yourself on a couple really important pieces of real estate,
like a temple,
and people have to get you out of there or you're going to win. But if they're trying to get you out of there and you defend successfully, you're going to win. So it's really cool stuff. Level 4 pyramids, like part of you is like, oh, I don't know, that's going to cost me a fortune to get up there, but at the same time I'm going to get those cool cards. Well, also remember that it's going to get you a victory point. Okay, and the victory point power tiles that you can buy. So this is one of those games where if you get a good round, you can kind of put everything in place subtly and all of a sudden leap ahead to win the game.
Right.
So, but there's, like I said, a lot of different paths to do that, a lot of different ways that you can be stopped if people notice. So you want to know, and that's that little booklet. You're going to be looking at that little booklet a lot.
Right.
The different ways that you can get your victory points to win.
Exactly. So and I think it's a lot of strategies here, and we got a lot more plays to figure it out. But it's the kind of game you play it, and you just I don't know. We felt we want to play it again. It's like there's more here to learn, so we just want to jump back in.
It's one of those games where your understanding of it evolves quickly because each quote unquote generation is very brief because it's only going to take you an hour, maybe 90 minutes. You play, you learned a bunch, you want to play again.
Yeah, exactly. All right, so we got to talk about final thoughts here.
Ready in final thoughts? So Russ.
Yeah.
It's time for my revenge.
Uh-oh. All right.
Russell, in the style of Emotep, please describe the patent-pending D6G rating system.
Emotep? Really? Okay. I'm gonna. Well, I don't know too many. I don't know Emotep. Well, I'm gonna go with my own. Can I go with my own Pharaoh?
The famous vizier. Go with Pharaoh. Go with any important.
All right. Here we go.
You want? Oh my God.
I will call then for help me describe the patent pending D6G rating system. I will call upon the ancient spirits of evil, transform this decaying form into Mumra, the ever living. All right. Once you are a giant, evil, pharaoh-like overlord. In order to properly describe the necessary levels of power in a game, we'll compare it to how good an overlord feels, an ancient pharaoh feels, when he destroys a mighty enemy. For example, let's say only 1 out of 6 ancient pharaohs like me, Mumra, would really enjoy killing a minor hero like Wily Kit. So that'd be like a 6+. But if I wanted to kill a more important enemy of a pharaoh, let's say Chitara, she might be like a 5+, so it'd be a good. But if I really wanted a really, really good feeling, a really great game that most pharaohs would enjoy taking on and defeating, like a Lion-O with his little, sword of omens, that would be a 2+. What do you think?
That's good. The key is the lower the number, the better for new listeners.
There you go. All right. So, Craig, what do you think?
Okay. What do I think? I think, as we've already said, it's just going to be a summary. The components are awesome, as we've already said. I love, as most listeners know, fast games that aren't going to time you down all night, that move fast, that are aggressive, that are fun, and then boom, you can either play again or you can play something else. This is one of those games. I like the combat system because I like the combat system first time I saw it when it was Game of Thrones. Mm-hmm. I like the fact that you're kind of managing your luck. It's not going to come down to a dice roll. It's going to come down to your card play and who you've got on the table. So it's more reading your opponent. It's like a little tiny mini game in the overall scheme of things. I am not the big, huge Egypt fan that Russ is, but I do enjoy the Egypt theme, and I think it's very well done here, from the artwork to the little hieroglyphs that are used as icons throughout the game, to the artwork, which is beautiful. And it uses D4s as pyramids, so
right, that's a win.
You can't lose with that. So I am going to say I'm going to give this game a 3+. And I'm going to give it a +1 if you really like the Egypt theme. I think I'll go with that.
Nice. That's a good rating.
Egypt. There aren't that many games if you like Egypt. So if you're looking for a cool game that's got some combat and it's fast and it's bloody and you like Egypt, you're not going to find many games that are going to scratch that itch as well as this one does.
I know, right? So that's a good rating. So 4 out of 6 gamers will enjoy it. And more if they like Egypt. So I'm with you. The components are really fantastic. It looks just. And especially if you're a component junkie, if you like games that look as good as they play, this is one of those games. I love the simple mechanics, like you said. I like the aggressive nature of the game. It feels a lot like Advanced Small World, and that's not a ding against Small World at all. I love Small World. This game's like that, but let's say you want a little bit of a meatier game, and just even more bling on your components beyond cardboard. This game's got all that going on. And as Craig said, I like the aggressiveness of it. This game, you just can't. I mean, you can kind of turtle a little bit, but not really, because you don't have enough guys to survive onslaughts, and you cannot spawn more guys usually out in the field. You can only do it at your city. So eventually, one of those temples is going to fall. It's just a matter of how much you can maximize your victory points during that time period you're able to own it. The only negative is that the 2 battle cards every fight. I know why they did it. It's to fix a problem where they wanted you to get through the deck faster, but it just feels fiddly. I always forget to do it. So I wish they'd come up with a smarter thing there. But that's the only little thing I can think about the whole game that's not perfect. I really like everything else about the game. Looks great, plays great. I'm a huge Egyptian fan. I love it. It's a great time. And Craig, I agree with your rating system. I'm going to give it a 3+, and I'm going to give it a +1 if you're a gamer who likes bling. I don't care if you're an Egyptian fan. If you like your components just really shine, this is a 2+ game. I don't really see how any fan of board games, hobby board games, will not really enjoy this experience. Just good stuff here.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Is that Kemet?
That is Kemet.
Kemet.
Are you looking for news, reviews, and interviews? The D6 generation. It's groovy as groovy does define, baby. The D6 generation. Born to game. Oh, yeah.
Hey, and now we want to talk a little bit about vacations, because we just got back from vacation, and what time is better to think about vacations than when you just got back from vacation?
I know, you get back from vacation, you're like, you have that little post-vacation, like, blues, like, I want to. But the best way to get out of those blues is to plan your next vacation, and there's no better company to work on planning your vacation. If you're a geek, and if you're listening to this, you probably are, then, of course, Geek Nation Tours. What you want to do is go to geeknationtours.com, click on the upcoming tours link, and what you will see there is all our upcoming tours, including, getting very close, the New York City Comic-Con tour, which really, no better way to get your comics books on, and especially New York Comic-Con, one of the largest cons on the East Coast. You get in there, you're going to get some great signatures, you're going to get some great exposure to all the folks who work in comics, from DC, Marvel, you name it, they're there. They're there with the latest stuff, new comic movies, all that stuff's going to be there. And G&T is going to take you through not just that, but all the stuff going on around the con that is also geek-related in this fine city of New York.
Indeed. In fact, I got to hang out with some of the Geek Nation Tours guys in Chicago with Adepticon.
Nice.
And I chatted with Terrace. Terrace is a wreck during these tours because he is literally running around making sure everybody's having a good time. They get to where they want to go. They get to the events they want to see. And he is working nonstop to make sure everybody's vacation is as awesome as it can be on site. Going out to dinner. I went out to dinner with a bunch of the guys one night. It was actually a bunch of the Battle Foam guys and 40K Radio guys and me, and we all went out to dinner with a bunch of the Geek Nation Tours guys. And he does that wherever he goes. He finds people that you're going to be interested in meeting up with. He sets up these dinners that you don't have to go to if you want to go do something else, but you've got all these options, and that's the key. With Geek Nation Tours, there is just a never-ending string of options for you to enrich your experience through the eyes or the broken glasses, maybe, of a geek.
Exactly right. That's geeknationtours.com.
This edition of Jever Notice is brought to you by Alchemist Academy. Cast spells, summon familiars, and increase your grade. Support on Kickstarter and get your 3 exclusive D6G, the Dice Tower, and the Secret Cabal podcast summoning spells. Ends May 19th. Do you ever notice how rare a sense of propriety sometimes seems to be? It's been a while since I've been out on the wide gaming scene, because I'm doing a lot. And so generally what this used to be, do you ever notice used to be the things that annoyed me about my own people, so to speak. And then, I did it all, and there you go. And so, I usually look for other things to talk about, but I need to talk about a sense of propriety, the proper behavior. And at Adepticon, it's a big convention, and so there were great opportunities for me to see the whole panoply of humanity on parade. And it was, for the most part, awesome. Lots of really great people, lots of people that I see once a year that remember me as if I'm living right down the street. It's a great experience. It seems like every now and then there's those few people that really just by contrast, almost stick out like sore thumbs, and it almost makes it worse. The big, enormous man, and I don't have to say that he's enormous, but I'm gonna. He was enormous, just dropping F-bombs left and right, day and night. And I was there alone. My son wasn't there with me, but I mean, I was horrified. I was horrified. It's not okay to drop F-bombs, okay? It doesn't make you cool. It annoys most of us, I think. And it doesn't give you any sort of street cred that you think it does. I don't know what goes on that it's okay to drop F-bombs and dude, I'm just relaxing, whatever. It's gross. It's ridiculous. It's stupid. Another thing was here and there you've talked about it, you've heard about it, you may have found it on the internet to look at it, or maybe you were at Adepticon and you saw it. The awesome display made by one of the players of Warhammer Fantasy that looked amazing. It was a giant sailing ship with the decks were the basically the transportation tray for his Empire army, and his Empire army actually formed up on the decks of this enormous sailing ship that he made, fighting a kraken with the tentacles coming up all over it and everything. And there was a beautiful poem that he'd put, and it was all inside a giant treasure chest, an open treasure chest, like it was bursting out of the treasure chest. And on the inside of the treasure chest lid was this huge poem, and it was awesome. And not to be a nerd, an English nerd, but it was in standard medieval ballad form. Which means, of course, that it was 8 syllables, 6 syllables, 8 syllables, 6 syllables in a series of quatrains, of course. And the rhyme scheme is ABCB, meaning that the last line rhymes with the second line, and the other two don't rhyme. I just tell you this to give you some background. And so I had heard all weekend long how amazing it was. Everybody was telling me I needed to see it. And I finally, on Sunday, he was wheeling it out. I finally saw it. I wanted to say how cool it was. I walked up, and a guy was there going, "That poem is excellent. Iambic pentameter is an excellent way for you to... That's very clever that you did this. Iambic pentameter, blah, 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 blah. Iambic pentameter, blah, 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 blah. Iambic..." Now, for those of you who are unaware, iambic pentameter was the verse form used by Shakespeare, of course, and most of the Elizabethan era playwrights, which is a 10-syllable line with the alternating emphasis going on every other syllable, and it was blank verse, meaning it doesn't rhyme at all. So I was standing there, and I had that moment. You've got these moments, and you're like, I really want to tell this guy that he's wrong, but how do you do that? You don't. You can't do that. You don't want to be that guy. TFG, the wrong TFG. So I just sort of bit my tongue, and I was like, okay, I'm just going to walk away. And I walked away. But I was like, and the poor guy who was like, I mean, maybe he did. The guy who made it and wrote it knew, because he was saying like, oh, I don't know anything about poetry. I just wrote it because it looks cool. And maybe he just didn't want to get into it. But if on the off chance you're listening, that was an excellent example of medieval ballad form. So I don't know. I mean, did the guy really think it was iambic pentameter? Maybe he did. Maybe I am that much of an English nerd. It could be. It could very well be. And as far as propriety, there's one more thing. And my objectivism being something totally different that you learned about at the beginning of the podcast. My objectivity is in question, because this has to do with Romeo. And Romeo, as many of you know, is, and I get the emails, and I know that some of you, he's abrasive. He can be abrasive. He's a very strong personality with very strong opinions, and that has, a very polarizing effect on a lot of people. I don't know anyone who's ever bought anything from him and wasn't really happy with the way it turned out. He is a businessman. He's a very hard-charging businessman. He's a former Marine, with everything that goes with that. But there's all kinds of stuff out there that's really not true, which I find intriguing. And people that really don't like him, there are people I really don't like, and most of them don't know that I don't like them, because I always followed my grandfather's theory, which was there's really no reason for you to tell a person you don't like that you don't like them, because then nothing good is going to come of that. And I have very good friends that have a completely opposite point of view, and when they don't like somebody, they want them to know, but that's never the way I've been. So, but there's a few people who hate him, and that level of hatred I don't understand. And that level, and I've talked about it before, where they went and they tried to, derail the Kickstarter and weird stuff like that. Well, at Adepticon, and you might have thought that was paranoid, and maybe it was, I don't know. But there, at Adepticon, there were people who were taking stickers, little stickers that they had printed up that said, Romeo is a feminine hygiene product. And they were sticking them all over the hotel. So what is the level of hatred there? That you're putting up these stickers, that you're sticking these stickers to elevator walls and wallpapered walls and in bathrooms and things like that. Because first of all, you're entitled to your opinion, and I'm never going to tell anybody that they can't be entitled to their opinion. And I have had conversations with people where I've tried to convince them their opinion was wrong before, and I have had conversations where I went, okay, well, you're totally, you're entitled to your own opinion. But seriously, putting stickers up, and if I don't think any of them, I don't think there's many, I think it was probably a handful, and I think that the people in charge, I think they know who it was, which is good, but they talked to them, and the stickers kept showing up, so I don't know, though. The interesting thing is these are never people who would go up to Romeo's face and say that he was a feminine hygiene product, but they're more than happy to put these stickers all over the elevators and all over the hotel. And what you didn't think, and I'm talking to them now, even though I'm knowing that they're not out there, but this has just sort of been boiling up in me because of my sort of unique relationship with Adepticon, where the Adepticon Council is, I'm friends with them, and I talk, like Hank and I talk, and I hang out with Hank for a while. You cost the people who through Adepticon, you cost them, the people who organized that, hundreds upon hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. Because a hotel charges the organizers for anything that gets damaged or defaced over the course of the event. So they got a bill. They got a photo of every one of those stickers that had to be removed, and then an itemized bill for everything that had to be removed. And we're talking Chicago, so it's not cheap. Because trust me, I actually witnessed it firsthand. Literally, to put an extension cord 20 feet from a wall to a cash register and then tape it down, something any of my students can do on a regular basis, took 3 grown men to do. Because they weren't allowed. The tape guy wasn't allowed to lay the cable. The cable guy wasn't allowed to plug it in. I mean, craziness. So you can only imagine how much it's going to cost to scrape all these stickers off and then get rid of the residue. And so was that the purpose? Did you not like Adepticon? You wanted to get your message out. So you got your message out. I mean, I guess a little bit, because they kept constantly removing the stickers as soon as somebody reported one. But talk about a complete failure of propriety and a complete lack of class. However you feel about that guy, okay? And divorce yourself from the fact right now that I know him and that I work for him and that I like him and he's a friend of mine. That's a crime against everybody who's running that event. Everybody who put their heart and soul and hundreds of man hours per person into Adepticon, and from their coffers they have to pay to get all those stickers taken off. And then there's a great, I don't even know what it's called because they don't even have a sign, I don't think, but it's almost like a flea market of old models from all kinds of different games, and they're just in giant Tupperware tubs. And I saw these stickers stuck on the sides, on the inside of those Tupperware tubs. And so that business guy doesn't have anything against Romeo, I would assume, because he was selling battle foam. But now he's got to take care of that too. So that's time and effort that he's going to. You're a child. You are literally a child, and that goes to a whole array of psychological and social evolution that clearly I don't have time for now because I've gone over, because I'm so hot under the collar about it's just a pet peeve of mine, because it happens so often in high school where kids just do not think the consequences of their actions and the extended message that you're sending. And those people who themselves are serious feminine hygiene products, they didn't think about that. Or maybe they did and they don't care. And that's what I tell my students when these things happen. Whether or not you meant to send that message, that's the message you sent because you didn't care enough to think. And so I thank God again for the class level of our listeners, because you guys, I hear the horror stories, I see the people out there, and almost never do we actually encounter that sort of thing with our listeners. You guys are awesome. You when you have an issue, you come to us very respectfully and say, "Hey, you might not have meant this, but you said this, and I'm kind of confused," and stuff like that. And we have a dialogue, and not always. There's some people who just get offended, and twice. That's how awesome you guys are. So again, I would like to end this, round it off with it's already been too long, with a pay-in to you. I'm not going to sing it. So just. Think if you've got an impulse, if you feel that strongly about swearing or lecturing somebody about poems or getting the message across that somebody is an evil feminine hygiene product, okay, think about it and think about the impact it's going to have on the people around you. Not so much lecturing about poetry, but still, I just thought that was an intriguing element. That's not all I've got to say about this, but I'm going to force myself to stop. So that's all I'm going to say about this. Thanks for listening, and good night.
Achievement unlocked. You've made it to the end of another D6 Generation episode, the podcast whose humor has universally been acclaimed as not too horrible. Please let us know what you thought of the show by either emailing us at info@d6generation.com or by posting in our official D6G episode thread at the top of the DACA discussions forum on DACA.com. If for some inexplicable reason you actually enjoyed this show, you can help others find out about it by leaving positive reviews on iTunes. See you in 2 weeks. Thanks for listening, and happy gaming.
The theme from Total Fangirl comes from the soundtrack of The Last Night on Earth, the zombie game, courtesy of Flying Frog Productions, and is a composition of Mary Beth Magalanes.
I'm dying. I can't breathe. He's dying. Roll him back into the water.
Good.